I died a hero, or at least I tried to. Before I ended up here, I was a college grad teaching in a remote border region. One day, I saw a massive Tibetan brown bear charging at a little girl. I didn't think. I just grabbed a wooden club and started screaming to draw its attention. It worked. The bear turned its fury on me instead. Its massive jaws snapped shut, and everything went black. I thought that was the end, but a light appeared in the darkness. A voice calling itself the Heavenly Tao told me I'd get a second chance at life, along with 3 special abilities. When I finally opened my eyes, I was 18 years old again, living in an ancient desert outpost. I was a member of a minority tribe, surviving in a world far removed from the one I knew. So far, the Heavenly Tao had only revealed the first of my 3 powers, the scanner. If I looked at a creature and focused, I could analyze its biological data. The stronger the target, the longer the scan took. Once the scan finished, I could instantly summon an exact copy of that creature from my system using resource points. I tested it out around the outpost. A common hen cost 5 points to summon. The guard dog at the gate cost 15. I also figured out how to earn points. It had to be meat, and it couldn't be alive. When I pressed my hand against a slab of old cured bacon in the kitchen, a prompt popped up in my mind. Asterisk 1 pound of meat detected. Convert to 1 resource point. Asterisk. I was currently stationed at Changfeng Outpost, located on the far southwestern border of the Dali dynasty. It was 300 miles from the nearest city. The roads were crumbling, and travelers were rare. Even exiled officials thought this place was too remote. It was so desolate that people joked it should be called Northwest Peak instead of Changfeng. Meat was a luxury here. Even the rats were nothing but skin and bones. That single slab of bacon was my only source of points for now. While I waited for more resources, I spent my time scanning everything in the outpost to build my library. Old Man Li, the night watchman, was frail and cost 50 points. Station Master Wu, a burly middle-aged man, was worth 100. Then there were the post horses, strong, well-fed beasts that cost 300 points each. A horse was worth 3 grown men. It made sense. Getting kicked by a horse was definitely 3 times worse than a punch from Wu. Scanning took time, about 10 points per second. A 300-point horse required 30 seconds of undivided attention. If I got distracted or the target moved out of sight, the scan failed, and I had to start over. I needed points badly. I looked at the 3 horses and wondered if I could kill one in the middle of the night to harvest it. But there was no way to do that quietly without alerting Old Man Li or Station Master Wu. I looked at the 2 men next, then caught myself. What am I thinking? I'm a good person. Finally, I took a hen to a secluded spot and wrung its neck. A prompt appeared. Recyclable resource detected. Gain 5 resource points. It cost 5 points to summon a hen and gave 5 points back upon death. It was basically a resurrection spell. A faint white light flashed, and the dead bird vanished. Another flash, and a healthy, glossy-feathered hen stepped out of the light, clucking loudly. Summoned creatures had their own instincts, but they were 100% loyal to me. I tested my mental commands. Charge. Peck. Fly into that tree. The hen obeyed perfectly. It couldn't handle complex logic, but as long as it was in my line of sight, I could control it like a puppet. If it left my sight, it would follow its last order or act on instinct. I told it to go find bugs in the grass and come back when it was full. It nodded its little head and trotted off. Later, while chewing on a piece of dried tofu, I discovered a massive secret. The tofu triggered a prompt. Meat is protein, and tofu is protein. In this system, protein equaled points. The conversion rate for tofu was worse, 3 pounds for 1 point, but it was 6 times cheaper than meat. I watched Station Master Wu wolfing down his food across from me. At 100 points, he was essentially worth 100 pounds of pork or 300 pounds of tofu. Expensive, but not impossible to reach. Suddenly, the rapid thunder of hooves broke the silence. A horse skidded to a halt outside. A young woman leaped down from the saddle. She looked about my age, dressed in sleek black martial arts gear that showed off her athletic frame. A long saber hung at her waist. A real-life hero. I looked at her, and a number hovered over her head, 850. Her white horse was a magnificent creature. I hurried out to greet her, leading the horse to the stable. I used the chore as an excuse to start a scan. It took over a minute. Asterisk Dewan Steed. Peerless agility. Can travel 800 miles a day. Summon cost, 1,000 points. Asterisk. Then I hovered around the 850 girl, acting like a diligent attendant while I finished her scan. Even though she was 8 times stronger than Station Master Wu, she was still cheaper than her horse. My respect for her dropped slightly. To her, I probably looked like a starstruck boy who had fallen in love at first sight and didn't know how to strike up a conversation. She glanced at me and seemed surprised. I could tell she didn't expect to find someone with my looks in a place this miserable. Station Master Wu came out, rubbing his hands with a practiced, servile smile. He asked if she was staying the night. She was brisk and requested a clean room and a basin of hot water. Smart girl. In a dump like this, hot water was the only luxury we could actually provide. Eating the local food was a gamble. Her own dried rations were safer. When I brought the hot water to her room, she stopped me. Her voice was surprisingly gentle. I guess being handsome has its perks. She asked if any other martial arts types had passed through recently. I gave her a polite bow, just like I'd seen in the movies. Please ask anything, Mississippi. I will tell you everything I know. She seemed pleased by my manners. Have any wanderers or swordsmen come by lately? This place is remote, I replied. We rarely see travelers. You're the only guest we've had in 3 days. She frowned. Business is that bad? How do you survive? I gave her a bitter smile. We don't make money from travelers anymore. We survive on meager government subsidies. 3 meals a day of thin soup, just enough to keep us from starving. The young swordswoman looked at my thin frame, and her heart clearly softened. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small silver ingot, pressing it into my hand. She told me to buy some meat to build up my strength. The silver weighed at least 1 tael. That was enough to buy 300 pounds of brown rice, or half a pig. In my system, that translated to at least 150 resource points. That single piece of silver was worth more than the lives of Station Master Wu and Old Kai combined. I put on a show of declining it, muttering something about not deserving a reward without merit. She insisted, telling me it was payment for the information I provided. She told me to keep it and to report back if anyone else checked in or if I heard any other news. As I walked out the door, I was buzzing with joy. People say soft rice is hard to swallow, but that's only because they've never had a chance to eat it. This little heiress was a hero worth 850 points for a reason. She was loaded. A regular soldier's theoretical salary was 1.5 taels of silver a month, but after the central government and local officials took their cuts, they were lucky to see 30% of that. In this era, a simple set of cotton clothes cost a full tael because production was so low. That's why commoners usually stripped naked before a fight. They couldn't afford to ruin their clothes. A woman like her, who fought with her clothes on, was definitely from a rich or noble family. Salt was another luxury, priced so high that a month's supply cost as much as 5 pounds of grain. Her 1 tael of silver had officially bought my loyalty. If she needed me to go through fire and water, I was her man. The next morning, Station Master Wu woke up early. He said the station supplies were running low and he needed to head to the county town to shop. He left Old Kai to watch the house and told me to grab the other horse and follow him. I was thrilled. I could finally trade the silver I'd just received for resource points. The county town was about 20 miles away. We rode slowly and arrived in about 4 hours. In this remote wilderness, even a county town wasn't exactly bustling. As soon as we entered, Wu headed straight for the town's only brothel. He tossed me 5 copper coins, told me to find something to eat, and said to meet him back at the brothel later. After seeing the beauty of the young swordswoman, the top-tier girls at this backwater brothel looked like a joke to me. I was happy to get away. I went on a shopping spree, buying meat and dried tofu until the silver was gone. In exchange, I gained 150 resource points. With a comfortable balance in my pocket, I started scanning the people I passed on the street. I saw the brothel's star girl, Ying. She was frail and weak, worth only 40 points, about the same as 120 pounds of dried tofu. I thought that if Wu treated me better, I might summon someone like her as a bonus for him later. But for now, forget it. I saw the brothel madam, worth 35 points. A restaurant owner, worth 25. The station really needed a cook since Old Kai and I were terrible at it, but I didn't run the place. Unless I killed Wu and replaced him with a summon, I couldn't make that call. And as stingy as old Wu was, he didn't deserve to die. I scanned a passing caravan guard. He was strong, worth 120 points. But honestly, watching his movements, I realized he'd struggle to beat old Wu's 100 points. How did he even get a job? I rubbed my chin and looked around. I saw a lame beggar in a corner, a constable dozing at a tea stall, and a gray-robed monk walking slowly with a horse. The monk had a kind face and a scholarly air. I scanned him. 430 points. He was a total sleeper. The old saying was true. In the martial world, you have to be careful of monks, nuns, and women. I followed him for a bit until he turned around with a suspicious look. I quickly folded my hands in a prayer gesture, looking like a devout believer. The skin finished. I stopped following him and headed back toward the brothel. When I arrived, I found old Wu in a massive brawl. He was fighting several thugs who were all rated over 70 points. They were holding their own against Wu's 100 points. Standing nearby was a young nobleman worth 50 points, screaming at the top of his lungs for them to kill the ignorant fool. I am the station master of Changfeng Station. Wu yelled. You are attacking a government official. The nobleman laughed. You're not even a 9th rank official. You dare compete with me for Ying? You're looking for death. The thugs fought harder. Wu was struggling, his hat knocked sideways. I scanned myself. The system couldn't clone me, but it gave me self-awareness. I was worth 50 points, half of Wu's strength. If I jumped in, I was just handing over my life. But Wu was one of my own. I couldn't just watch him die. I retreated into a deserted alley and opened my summoning menu. With my 150-point balance, the strongest option was the caravan guard. A flash of light flickered, and the guard appeared out of thin air. But there was a problem. He was stark naked. I realized then that summons didn't come with equipment. It was a bit embarrassing, but if the system copied clothes and weapons too, I could probably exploit it to get infinite gold and silk. I only had one empty cloth sack with me. I unwrapped it and threw it to him to cover up. The guard took the cloth and tried to wrap it around his waist. I stopped him. Wrap it around your head. I ordered. Mask your face. Now go save him. Back at the brawl, the crowd was enjoying the show when a naked man with a sack on his head charged out of the alley. He sprinted forward and landed a straight punch right on the nobleman's jaw. The guy was stunned. Why was a naked man suddenly punching him? My father is the county. Before he could finish, the naked guard launched a flying kick into his face. As he jumped, he left absolutely nothing to the imagination. The crowd erupted in laughter. Some women screamed and covered their children's eyes, though they didn't seem to be looking away themselves. Wu took the chance to sweep a thug's legs out from under him and scrambled back. The rest of the thugs abandoned Wu to swarm the naked attacker. The guard leaped into the air, performing a beautiful whirlwind kick that sent the thugs crashing to the ground. I watched from the sidelines, impressed. This 120-point guard was way more effective than that 100-point fraud, old Wu. Just look at that kick. Just look at that energy. The nobleman was terrified. It was common for poor people to strip their shirts before a fight, but he had never seen someone go full commando. This guy must really love his clothes. The naked guard stood tall. The wind blew, and though he was exposed, he looked like a hero. I realized then that true dignity didn't come from clothes. As the old books say, being unkempt is a breach of etiquette, but failing to show your power is even worse. Wu, having escaped, had already grabbed both our horses. He signaled to me where I was hiding. Get on. Let's go. Old Wu really had no loyalty. He'd been saved by a naked stranger and didn't even think to help his savior get away. We jumped onto our horses and bolted. The naked guard turned and vanished back into the alleyways. I had given my guard a simple order. Get away and find me at the courier station later. Old Wu and I didn't waste a second. We pushed our horses to their limits, racing out of the county gates and back to the safety of our station. Our big shopping trip had been a total disaster. Once we were back, old Wu kept cornering me, warning me not to tell a soul about him getting beaten up at a brothel. I nodded and bowed, acting like a loyal subordinate, but inside, I was disgusted. The man had picked a fight over a woman who cost the equivalent of 100 pounds of dried tofu, and he couldn't even win. He was a complete waste of space. By nightfall, my summoned guard finally arrived at the station on foot. I met him outside. He had taken the cloth bundle off his head and wrapped it around his waist to cover himself. I didn't even want that cloth back, even if it was worth 100 coins. His name was Lou. He was nearly 40 with over 20 years of experience as a professional escort. He was built like a block of iron, his face weathered by wind and frost, with a thin scar running from his left cheek to behind his ear. Lou introduced himself, explaining that his years on the road made him an expert in hunting and fighting. More importantly, his outdoor survival skills meant his cooking was miles ahead of mine or old Lee's. He even specialized in a martial art called the whirlwind leaf sweeping kick. Looking at this 120-point powerhouse, I was beyond satisfied. I wished I could summon 100 of him and form a Lou army. Unfortunately, my resource points were limited, so I had to be careful with my spending. Lou moved into the station immediately. Even though he'd moved the cloth from his head to his crotch, Old Wu recognized his muscular physique the moment he saw him. Lou was a natural liar, though. With a straight face, he claimed he had lost everything gambling and the casino had stripped him naked. He begged for a job, saying he'd work just for food and water. Old Wu was overjoyed. According to government regulations, the station was understaffed, which meant he didn't have enough ghost employees to embezzle funds from. By hiring Lou for just scraps of food, Old Wu could pocket at least 3,000 silver coins from the government's monthly allocation. This area often had wild people coming out of the mountains for work, so the paperwork was easy. Old Wu had stacks of blank identity documents. He signed Lou up on the spot as a new station guard. Just like that, Lou the guard became Lou the official. He put on a spare uniform and immediately took over the kitchen duties. Old Wu sighed contentedly, wishing more heroes, or better yet, beautiful women, would come wandering in. I kept my mouth shut, but I was thinking, asterisk, you're just making wishes now? I could fulfill them, but why would I bother for you? Asterisk. That afternoon, the sound of hooves echoed outside again. A large man led a horse into the courtyard. The horse was better than the ones we had, worth 320 points, but the man himself was only worth 270. Having grown used to judging people by their numerical value, I couldn't help but feel a bit dismissive. When he tossed 5 measly coins on the table to ask for information, my contempt hit its peak. Still, I stayed professional. A 270-point man could still kill me with one punch, just like his horse could kill me with one kick. I couldn't afford to be rude. I told him respectfully that no one had checked in recently, except for one young lady. The man frowned. A girl? Then it's not who I'm looking for. I went to the rich young lady's room to report the newcomer, but she didn't seem interested in a 270-point thug either. She just nodded and sent me away. Then, another guest arrived. A scholar on a light donkey, carrying a long sword. The donkey was worth 200 points. Then I checked the scholar. 1,500 points. My heart nearly stopped. I almost shouted out loud. What kind of god-level entity was this? A 300-point horse kick would kill me. A punch from this man was like being kicked by 5 horses in the exact same spot at once. I thanked my lucky stars for my detection system. This world was dangerous. You really couldn't judge a book by its cover. I put on my most flattering smile, bowing and scraping. Welcome, noble guest. Will you be staying the night or just dining? The scholar smiled gently. Dinner first, then a room. I led him to a table, scrubbing the chair and table with my rag until they shined before inviting him to sit. The whole time, I was silently scanning him. Are you this attentive to every guest? He asked with a chuckle. I froze for a second, then widened my smile. Sir, we are in a remote place. It's rare to see such a distinguished guest. I must do my best. How rare? He asked. Maybe once every 2 weeks. I replied honestly. Sometimes a whole month goes by without a soul. And today, including you, sir, there are 3 guests, a young lady and a large man. The scholar looked at me with a half-smile, as if checking to see if I was lying. Finally, he dismissed me. I played the part of the perfect waiter, standing a few yards away, ready to jump at his command. I didn't relax until the system chimed, confirming his data was fully logged. Then, I started feeling annoyed. This 1,500-point god hadn't given me a single tip for all my information. What a cheapskate. But then I caught myself. Asterisk, wait, I'm getting arrogant. A man like this talks to me, and I should be grateful just to be alive. How did I even dare to think about money? If I had the power of 5 horses in one fist, I probably wouldn't view normal people as humans either. The fact that he was being polite showed he had incredible upbringing. The guest rooms were close to each other. Knowing how sharp martial artists' ears could be, I didn't dare speak. I scribbled a note. Asterisk, a young scholar with a sword and donkey has arrived. Very powerful. Asterisk, and slid it under the rich girl's door. Meanwhile, Lou, now our official cook, was in the kitchen frying up a dish of green peppers and dried tofu. It was the best meal we could offer. I respectfully served it to the scholar. I was just about to turn away when trouble walked in. It was the 270-point thug. He sat down right across from the scholar and pulled the plate of tofu toward himself. You look like a new face, kid, the thug smirked. What's your name? Where are you from? I was screaming internally. Don't provoke him. You're a 270-point amateur. How dare you challenge a 1,500-point monster? The scholar looked up, a cold smile playing on his lips. Do you really want to know? You won't regret it. I don't scare easy, the thug laughed. My name is Lin Xian, the scholar said softly. I turned to run, but I wasn't fast enough. The moment the name left the scholar's lips, the thug reached for his blade. He only got it halfway out of the scabbard before a flash of steel severed his throat. The man collapsed toward me, his blood spraying across my back. Waiter, Lin Xian called out. His voice was still gentle, even as the body hit the floor. The world was terrifying. People here were so violent. They started killing before they even finished 2 sentences. I turned around, my face pale and trembling. Do you have something to say? Lin Xian asked warmly. I looked at the body, then at him, and just felt like crying. Sir, you have incredible power, I stammered, my heart hammering against my ribs. But this was my only set of clothes. Lin Xian paused, looking at the blood-soaked fabric of my uniform. A look of genuine apology crossed his face. My mistake. I'm sorry for ruining your clothes. He didn't mention anything about paying me back. I realized then that a man like him didn't think about money. He thought about life and death. I bowed low, hiding my frustration, and turned to leave. Wait, Lin Xian said, pointing at the massive corpse on the floor. Clean this up. I had no choice. As you wish, sir. I'll find a place in the back to bury him right away. He then pointed at the plate of dried tofu, now speckled with crimson droplets. I felt a wave of misery wash over me. I'll have the kitchen fry up a fresh plate for you immediately, I added, bowing again before scurrying out. I ran straight to Station Master Wu and reported everything. To my surprise, he didn't even blink. He had seen this kind of thing 100 times. Once we've cleared the area, Chong Luo, you drag the body to the back mountain and bury it, Wu said calmly. Old Lu, get back to the stove. Don't keep that young master waiting, or all our heads might roll next. Wu didn't just stand there. He started searching the body. He pulled out a heavy cowhide pouch tied with black string. Inside were 5 taels of silver and 300 copper coins. Wu pocketed the silver instantly, management fees, I assumed. He split the 300 coppers between me and Old Li. The station master beamed, tossing a coin in the air. Killing and arson really is the quickest way to thicken a wallet, he joked. Old Li pulled me aside, his voice a low whisper. Go bury the body. Once you're done, stay out there for a while. Don't come back too soon. Let us old-timers handle the station. You're young. Don't get caught in the crossfire of these martial arts vendettas. I nodded, feeling a rare spark of warmth. The old man actually cared. I dragged the thug's heavy corpse deep into the pine forest on the back mountain. Once I was sure I was alone, I tapped the absorb button on my system interface. The body vanished instantly. My resource points jumped from 30 to 300. This system was the ultimate tool for destroying evidence. If I ever lost my job at the station, I could definitely make a living as a cleaner. No matter how messy the crime scene, one click and not even ash remained. I brushed the dirt off my hands, but then a cold realization hit me. The rich girl. She was still in the inn. Her 850-point power level was impressive, but Lin Xian was a 1,500-point monster. If she provoked him, she was dead. I sprinted back to the dining area, but I was too late. She was already sitting right across from the scholar. I stayed back, hovering near the entrance, agonizing over how to warn her. I had learned the hard way that power levels in this world weren't written on people's foreheads. There were no chi condensation levels or glowing auras to warn you. You only found out who was stronger by fighting. Usually, the loser figured it out a split second before they died. Lin Xian, the life-taking scholar, the girl announced proudly. You've committed unspeakable crimes. Today, justice finds you. Lin Xian let out a strange, eerie smile. I winced. If I were a man who could hit with the force of 5 horses, and a little girl with the strength of 3 told me I was under arrest, I'd probably smile like that too. I could already see her becoming my next 850-point recycling project. Miss, I blurted out, stepping forward in desperation. Could you come outside for a moment? She waved me off without looking back. Don't interfere, waiter. Get lost. Lin Xian chuckled. You're young. I'll let you draw your blade first. She slowly pulled her sword from its scabbard. The moment the steel caught the light, Lin Xian's expression shifted from smugness to pure terror. The cold moon blade, he gasped. A flash of silver light blinded me. A sound like a dragon's roar filled the room. When I blinked, Lin Xian's head was flying through the air. I rubbed my eyes and pinched my thigh hard. It wasn't a dream. Lin Xian's headless body was still sitting there, frozen in a sword-swinging stance, but his blade had been snapped clean in two. The girl's sword was flawless, glowing with a chilling, lethal light. It was a total gear stomp. The rich girl's equipment was just better than the broke scholar's. I rushed over, checking her for injuries. I'd seen enough movies to know about the double kill, where the hero falls right after the villain. But she just sheathed her blade, her face flushing a light pink. Are you worried about me? She asked softly. I bowed quickly. A hero like you, fighting such a villain, of course I was worried for your safety. She beamed and pressed a 2-tail silver ingot into my hand. I'm taking the head to claim the bounty. You handle the body. Of course, leave it to me. I said, my heart soaring. I loved handling bodies. A 1,500-point body. Well, minus the head, maybe it was only 1,200 points now. Still, combined with the thug from earlier, I had exactly 1,500 points. Enough to summon Lin Xian himself as a puppet. A dark thought crossed my mind. If I summoned him and then took his head to the authorities for a second bounty, could I double dip? I shook the thought away. I wasn't a martial artist. I couldn't explain how I suddenly had the head of a wanted criminal. It was better to stay low and play it safe. The girl took the best loot before she left, and she didn't leave anything for Station Master Wu to scavenge. He didn't mind, though. He took the broken pieces of Lin Xian's sword and forged them into 2 high-quality daggers. Iron was a controlled substance and incredibly expensive. Between the thug's heavy saber, his horse, and Lin Xian's donkey, the Changfeng station had hit the jackpot. According to Wu and Old Li, a haul like this only happened once a decade. After the girl left, Wu was glowing with joy. Tonight, he declared, the rice and dried tofu are on the house. Eat until you burst. Late that night, I briefly considered using my points to summon the 850-point rich girl too. Well, keep me company. But I held back. Points were precious, and if the real version of her ever rode back this way and saw a clone of herself scrubbing floors, I'd be a dead man. The following days were peaceful. Our new recruit, Old Lu, was a godsend. He chopped wood, carried water, and did the work of 3 men without a single complaint. Everyone loved him. If only the world had more men like Old Lu, Wu sighed happily. Old Li lounged on a bench, humming a tune about beautiful mornings and fleeting youth. Wu joined in, the 2 old men singing in high-pitched, cracked voices, staring sentimentally at each other. It gave me the creeps. We seriously needed to hire some women at this station. The yang energy was getting way too thick. 2 days later, someone came from the county town. It was a messenger from the father of the rich kid who had caused the trouble earlier. He was polite, offering apologies and a small gift. Wu was technically a government official, even if he was low-ranking, and neither side wanted a legal headache over a few bruises. The matter was settled. Still, Wu didn't dare show his face in town for a while. But the station's supplies were running low again. Someone had to go. I suggested to Old Wu that we head to the provincial capital for our supplies. My reasoning was sound. First, we needed a massive haul. Second, the capital was a hub for information. We could hear whispers of the martial arts world or new imperial decrees. Living at a remote post like ours made us feel like frogs at the bottom of a well. But I had a secret motive. The capital was crowded. If I scanned and summoned people there, the chances of someone recognizing a clone were much lower. Back in the local county, if a traveler saw my summoned scout and realized he looked exactly like the town's signpost maker, I'd be in deep trouble. I could claim they were long-lost brothers once or twice, but eventually, people would notice my copy-paste superpower. Old Wu thought about it and agreed. The capital was 300 miles away, and the roads were crawling with bandits. A man of his immense value couldn't risk the trip, so he sent Old Lee and me instead. Old Lee and I rode hard for a day and a night. The journey was surprisingly quiet. While bandits were a real threat, hanging out on this specific road wasn't very profitable for them, so they usually stayed away. When we reached the capital, we showed our official badges and paperwork. The guards let us in for free. This city was on a completely different level than our small county. The streets were paved with green stone and wide enough for 4 carriages to drive abreast. Restaurants and tea houses lined the roads, their banners fluttering in the wind like battle flags. I pretended to get lost and accidentally stumbled into the kitchen of the city's grandest restaurant, the Zuexiang Pavilion. I immediately scanned the head chef into my system. He only cost 80 points. In this era, there weren't many ways to enjoy life, so a world-class meal was the ultimate luxury. Next, I had to visit the brothel district. The capital was famous for them. I needed to scan top-tier talent, courtesans, musicians, accountants, and even the maids. However, I only had 2 taels of silver in my pocket. That wouldn't even get me through the front door of a high-end establishment, let alone close enough to see a famous beauty. Getting lost in a kitchen was fine, but accidentally wandering into a famous courtesan's bedroom would get me beaten to death. I made an excuse to split up from Old Lee. I went to a pawn shop and spent 5 taels on a set of old women's clothes. Then, I found a secluded alley and spent 40 points to summon Ying, the top beauty from our local county. I had her change into the clothes and led her to the back door of a major brothel. My cover story: I was a grieving brother selling my sister to pay for our father's funeral. Ying was already a professional. With a bit of makeup and her natural, swaying grace, the madam was instantly impressed. She was a plug-and-play elite employee. Her face wasn't perfect, but in this business, it was about the figure, the charm, and that soul-hooking energy. The madam paid me 40 taels on the spot. I just made a massive profit. I walked around to the front entrance, now posing as a wealthy young master. I dropped 5 taels, a huge sum, just for a team meeting with the capital's most famous beauty, Lu Ruyan. While waiting, I scanned every girl I passed into the system. When I finally met Lu Ruyan, I realized my standards had been ruined by modern internet filters and high-tech beauty apps. She was pretty, but she didn't blow me away. I scanned her anyway, purely as a staff benefit for the boys back at the station. Surprisingly, summoning Lu Ruyan only cost 30 points, even less than Ying. It seemed the system didn't care about beauty or fame. It only cared about physical constitution. I could trade 90 pounds of dried tofu for a legendary beauty. This human trafficking business was incredibly lucrative. As I left, the madam watched me with a look of pure confusion. She had just bought a girl from a poor brother for 40 taels, only to see that same brother walk in the front door and blow 5 taels just to chat with a courtesan. She probably thought I was the worst brother in history. I headed straight to the market and spent 2 taels on 200 pounds of dried tofu. I found another quiet spot, absorbed it all into resource points, and refilled my tank. I would have bought more, but I literally cleared out the market's entire stock. I spent the rest of the day wandering. I scanned street vendors, 2 doctors, and an old craftsman. Strangely, I didn't find anyone with a power level over 100 points. It didn't make sense. This was a city of hundreds of thousands. Where were the masters hiding? Even old Wu, who only thought about eating and drinking, was worth 100 points. I eventually gave up. If I needed raw power, I already had my 270-point bruiser, the 430-point monk, and the 1,500-point Lin Xian. I didn't need muscle. I needed specialists. I spent the afternoon scanning accountants, legal experts, and master builders. Most of them cost between 40 and 70 points. It made me realize I might have been underestimating old Wu and our new guy, old Lu. A kick from a 300-point horse would kill me. 3 serious punches from old Wu would probably do the same. I decided right then to stop looking down on the heroes of the world. By the end of the day, I hadn't bought a single supply, but I had made 30 tales of profit and scanned a whole library of talent. I met back up with old Lee at the inn. He had been a busy bee, purchasing everything the station needed. Having an elder around was a godsend. I looked at him and thought, "Old Lee, if you ever die, I'm spending 50 points to bring you back immediately." The next morning, as we checked out, I finally hit the jackpot. I spotted a captain of the constabulary. His power level was 150 points. I scanned him instantly. Before leaving town, I hit the pawn shop again and bought 30 sets of old clothes for 10 taels. I stuffed them into bags and hung them from my saddle. Mission accomplished. As we rode away from the city, back at the brothel, the cloned Ing learned that her brother had spent the funeral money on a famous courtesan. She put on a dramatic performance, crying about the cruelty of the world and her father's unburied body. "I can't live in this loveless world," she wailed. Then, she slammed her head against a pillar and died on the spot. The madam was left standing there, completely stunned. I felt a little bad for her, but it had to be done. People travel between the county and the capital. If a regular customer saw two identical Yings working in different cities, it would be impossible to explain. I had ordered the clone to commit suicide shortly after I left to erase the evidence. 2 days later, old Lee and I arrived back at the Chongfeng station. Just before we reached the gates, I ducked into the woods, pretending I needed a bathroom break. I used my points to summon the 150-point captain and a generic-looking girl from the brothel. The captain's name was Ma. The moment his feet hit the grass, his eyes turned sharp, scanning the trees like a predator. He was exactly what I needed. The courtesan I summoned adjusted her hair, a faint, playful smile dancing on her lips. I gave her a new identity. She was now Mrs. Ma, the captain's wife. I tossed them some of the old clothes I'd bought and told them to walk the final mile to the station on foot. Their mission was simple: show up and ask for a job. Not long after I returned to Chongfeng Station, Captain Ma and his wife arrived. They claimed to be black tigers, independent wanderers from the mountains, looking for an honest living. Old Wu, our station manager, squinted at them, his eyes scanning every detail. He didn't say much, though. He just smiled, processed their paperwork, and officially hired them. That night, Old Wu called Old Lee and me for a private meeting. He looked worried, pacing the floor with a heavy frown. "What's wrong?" Old Lee asked. Old Wu leaned in close, his voice a low whisper. "Those two black tigers who arrived today? The man is from the 6 Gates, the high-level constabulary. And the woman? She's straight out of a brothel." I was genuinely shocked. "Old Wu, you can tell all that just by looking?" "The man has a certain aura," Old Wu explained. "His eyes are like frost-covered blades. Only veteran catchers from the 6 Gates have that look. As for the woman, well, I've spent enough time in the city brothels to know one when I see one." I had to hand it to him. Old Wu was the definition of a hidden dragon. He had spent decades weathering the storms of the world, and it showed in the wrinkles around his eyes. "They're likely a fake couple from the 6 Gates sent here to work a case undercover," Old Wu continued. "There's probably a bloodbath coming, and I can't reject them or expose them. We have to play along." He gave us strict orders. We had to follow the 3-Nos rule: don't interfere, don't offend, and don't blow their cover. He went even further, listing a dozen more rules: don't ask questions, don't spread rumors, don't take sides, and don't try to outshine them. Old Lee and I nodded solemnly. This was serious business. Over the next month, the station started to change. Captain Ma took over the night patrols. It was a useless job. This place was so poor that a thief would leave in tears, but he did it with military precision. Meanwhile, Mrs. Ma insisted on opening a tofu shop. This only confirmed Old Wu's suspicions. Who in their right mind opens a tofu shop 70 miles from the nearest town? Who was she going to sell to? Him? But the station had plenty of empty storefronts from its glory days, so he let her have one. I lent her the green donkey I'd brought back to turn the millstone. Mrs. Ma had Old Wu order hundreds of pounds of soybeans through official channels, claiming it was horse feed. Every day, the donkey turned the wheel, but the tofu she produced seemed to vanish into thin air. The tofu was a mystery, but my system didn't care. My resource points started climbing steadily, 10 points every single day. In 3 days, I could afford another Lu Ruyan. In 10, another old Wu. It turned out Mrs. Ma had gone back to her old profession. She started servicing old Wu and old Li for half a silver tael per visit. That money eventually flowed back to me. By the end of the month, I'd made 10 taels off her alone, which was more than enough to cover the next batch of soybeans. I couldn't help but complain to myself. Old Wu, old Li, you guys actually have that much money? Am I really the only poor person at this station? At night, I'd hear them singing drunkenly on the porch, sounding satisfied and full of life. Maybe I really should summon that famous people player, Lu Ruyan. These two clearly had artistic needs beyond their basic ones. A month later, a new group of guests arrived. They were led by a rugged, burly man. I scanned him immediately, 304 points. His 4 followers were all over 200 points, each carrying a long blade and looking weathered by travel. The burly leader watched old Lu, our handyman, with a strange look in his eyes. I could tell he was thinking that even our janitor moved like a martial arts master. He stood in the courtyard, drinking a bowl of wine, and spotted Captain Ma patrolling in his uniform. His gaze sharpened. He clearly thought Ma was a retired elite from the 6 gates working a quiet job. Then he saw the tofu shop. He probably figured the rumors about the Southwest trade route reopening were true. Why else would there be an elite guard and a shop in the middle of nowhere? The government must be quietly reinforcing the station. The man, whose name was Lei Xiao, known in the underworld as Iron Wall, approached old Wu. He gave a respectful salute, calling him governor. Old Wu was delighted. It had been years since anyone showed him that much respect. He pretended to be shocked when he heard the name Iron Wall Lei Xiao, even though he'd never heard of the guy in his life. I'm just a merchant, Lei Xiao laughed, his voice booming like a bell. I escort goods for the tea and horse salt gang. He looked at me and complimented my appearance, calling me extraordinary. I just kept munching on my sunflower seeds, nodding politely. Then he got down to business. He wanted to rent one of our empty buildings as a long-term warehouse for tea, salt, and fodder. Old Wu's eyes lit up. We have the perfect spot in the west courtyard. Dry, ventilated, and secure. Lei Xiao clapped his hands. Excellent. If I sign a 10-year lease, what would the rent be? Old Wu smiled calmly. For a 10-year commitment? 1,000 taels of silver. That's only 100 taels a year. Lei Xiao didn't agree immediately. He set his wine bowl down, looking hesitant. Let me think about it. Old Wu just toasted him and led old Li and me into the back room. The moment we were out of earshot, old Li grabbed old Wu by the collar, his voice a frantic hiss. Old Wu, are you insane? 100 taels a year? Where do you get the nerve to ask for that kind of money? Even in the provincial capital, shops wouldn't dare to ask for a price that high. Old Wu shushed us quickly, leading old Li and me into a private room. He shut the door tight before speaking in a low, urgent voice. Old Li, Lin Yuan, don't you two get it? When things are this strange, there's a reason. Why would a sane person rent a warehouse in this dump for 10 years? Would you do it? Would I? He leaned in closer. Something is happening that we don't know about yet. First, we get a constable from the 6 doors patrolling our yard. Then a beauty opens a tofu shop and doesn't sell tofu. Now, a merchant wants a 10-year lease. Changfeng Station is about to become a gold mine. Old Li scratched his head, looking skeptical. How? It's a ruin. Old Wu's expression turned grave. I've been thinking about it all day. There's only one possibility. The Southwest trade route is going to reopen. Old Li slapped his thigh in realization. He was right. If that route opened, Changfeng Station would be the throat of the entire region. Tea, salt, government supplies, everything would have to pass through here. I stood by, watching them with a blank expression, though my mind was racing. Old Wu dipped his finger in some spilled wine and drew a winding line on the table. Look, from Yunling Pass in the north, through Changfeng, all the way to Baixing Pass. This is the lifeline. When it opens, this place becomes a piece of fat meat. But can we keep it? Old Li asked, his voice trembling with a mix of greed and fear. Big players will want a piece. We can, Old Wu said firmly. My cousin is a vice minister in the Ministry of Personnel. He's a man who only opens his eyes when he sees silver. I've been stuck here for years because I never had enough to make him look my way. But if this station becomes profitable, he'll become my dearest brother. With his backing, we'll be untouchable. The candlelight flickered, casting long, distorted shadows against the dirt walls. Old Wu pointed at us. Others aren't reliable. But you two? You're my people. The next morning, Old Wu looked like a different man. He had dug out his official robes. They were old and lacked the fancy embroidery of high-ranking lords, but they gave him a certain dignity. Captain Ma followed him, hand on his blade, looking every bit the fierce protector. I watched them and realized I shouldn't underestimate the people of this world. Old Wu's logic was mostly wrong. After all, Captain Ma and the Tofu Beauty were my clones, but his intuition was incredible. He saw the signs and connected the dots. If he had a connection in the capital, he was a man worth keeping around. I looked at his back and thought, Old Wu, if you ever die, I'll definitely summon a clone of you. I promise, Lei Xiao, the merchant, didn't agree to the 1,000 taels immediately. It was a massive investment, and he needed to verify the rumors about the trade route. He made a tearful farewell to Old Wu, both of them acting like lifelong best friends despite having just met. A few days later, Captain Ma's sister, Ma Xiaoling, arrived at the station. In reality, she was a clone of the famous courtesan Lu Ruyan. She wore a veil, but her eyes were like spring water. One look was enough to turn Old Wu's bones to jelly. He immediately assigned her a private courtyard. Changfeng Station didn't have much, but it had plenty of space. At its peak, the walls were over a mile long. Most of it was in ruins now, but about a dozen buildings in the center were still habitable. The only thing Old Wu regretted was that Ma Xiaoling only sold her art, not her body. She sat in her courtyard, plucking the strings of a pipa. She played a classic tune, Moonlit Night, on the spring river. Before she was even halfway through, Old Lee was already sobbing, his eyes red. I wanted to roll my eyes. If it was a tragic song, I'd understand, but this? Old Lee wiped his tears and sniffled. That year, the spring river rose. My first love was crossing, and then she was gone. Soon after, another relative of Old Wu arrived. He was a burly man, a master chef I'd summoned from a top restaurant in the capital. He cost me 80 points, but he only required room and board to work. I could have summoned more, but the station wasn't making money yet. I just needed to satisfy the basic needs of the men: food, security, and a little entertainment. When Lei Xiao passed through the station again on his way back to the city, he was stunned. The food was suddenly world-class. The sound of the pipa drifting from the back was like a heavenly melody. He wasn't a man given to luxury, but he found himself wanting to stay. He wanted to eat every dish on the menu. He wanted to hear that music every day. Even if the trade route doesn't open here, he thought, 2,000 taels for 10 years of peace for my soul, it might be worth it. The pipa music grew faster, turning into a lively dance. Lei Xiao felt his heart swell. He remembered his youth, his dreams, and the long nights he'd spent wandering. Tears streamed down his face. He made his decision. He signed a lease. 1,000 taels up front. With the first bit of real capital in his hands, Old Wu stopped being a stingy miser. He gave Old Lee and me 50 taels each as a bonus. He wanted to be a good boss now. In a place like this, the station master was basically a king if he had the money. He held military, judicial, and financial power. Old Lee was promoted to chief security officer. He was in charge of all patrols, with Captain Ma and another clone under his command. I was promoted to chief of cavalry. I was in charge of scouts and guarding the trade route, also with Captain Ma and a clone under me. Congratulations, Chief Lee, I said, grinning. Staying strong in your old age. Congratulations to you, Commander Lin, he replied. A young hero in the making. That month, the Tofu Beauty turned over 50 taels of silver to me. She said 2 wealthy guests were in such a good mood they gave her massive tips. Ma Xiaoling turned over 4 taels, saying those same guests insisted on paying a listening fee. I looked at the silver and sighed. Old Wu, Old Lee, you two idiots. At this rate, your entire retirement fund is going to end up in the pockets of my clones. The station needed repairs, so I summoned 2 master craftsmen. They were experts in architecture and hidden mechanisms. They found every structural flaw and led a team of hired workers to fix them. If Old Wu hadn't been so cheap with the labor costs, we could have finished in half the time. By the end of the month, 3 major manors were fully renovated for the 3 of us to live and work in. But the good times didn't last. A new challenge arrived. The Prince of the South was coming for an inspection. We had 2 months' notice. Old Wu gritted his teeth and paid a messenger 10 taels of silver to find out the truth behind the visit. The news he brought back made my blood run cold. The Prince of the South didn't just want a place to sleep. He wanted to eat well, drink the best wine, and live in luxury. If he wasn't happy, nobody was happy. Old Wu paid the messenger another 30 taels of silver to get the real scoop. It turned out the prince was bringing his own family. This wasn't just a social call. It was a formal inspection to see if the southwestern trade route was ready to reopen. He wanted to see the infrastructure, the supply capabilities, and the security with his own eyes. Old Wu slipped the messenger another 10 taels. The man leaned in close and whispered a warning. The prince didn't want to hear about difficulties. He only cared about results and progress. If we cried about being poor, the prince would simply replace us with someone who wouldn't complain. Old Wu's hand shook as he realized the weight of this intel. He handed over a final 10 taels and bid the messenger a tearful farewell. Immediately, Old Wu called a meeting. The city wall was our face, and it had over a dozen gaping holes. We had to fix them, or at least make them look fixed. My summoned master craftsman, Chui, suggested a clever trick. We could build hollow walls that looked magnificent on the outside, but were supported by internal wooden beams. It saved time and material. We could fill them with real stone and earth later, after the prince left. Old Wu loved the idea, but we were short on manpower. Captain Ma frowned and said he had some old friends willing to help for just room and board. They could patrol, build, and clean from dawn until dusk without stopping. There was just one weird catch. They loved dried tofu. To hire 20 strong men, we needed to provide 200 pounds of high-quality dried tofu per person. If we ran out of tofu, meat would do, at a rate of 1 pound of meat for 3 pounds of tofu. It was a bizarre request, but after getting used to the tofu beauty shop, Old Wu didn't blink. Ma Xiaoling offered to source the tofu through her shop. Old Wu tried to haggle, asking if it could be cheaper. Captain Ma shrugged and said he could bring in old and weak men instead, but they'd just be for show. Old Wu gritted his teeth and ordered 20 strong men. Next, we needed shops. Old Wu wanted at least 10 stores stocked with 7 days' worth of high-end wine, meat, tea, salt, sugar, and medicine. Old Li volunteered to go to the county seat to buy the goods, but he needed cash. Old Wu painfully pushed 500 taels across the table. His face looked like he was mourning every single coin. When it came to finding reliable shopkeepers and clerks, Ma Xiaoling stepped up again. She claimed to have old acquaintances from the capital who were experts. Old Wu stared at Captain Ma and Ma Xiaoling, his eyes darting between the two clones. He swallowed hard and told them he was counting on them. He even joked that if they pulled this off, he'd do whatever they wanted. Late that night, Old Wu pulled Old Li and me aside for a private talk. He looked miserable. He told us he felt like he had sold his soul to a demon. He had heard legends of an ancient cult that practiced bean sprout soldiers, casting beans to grow an army. He was convinced that the dried tofu we were buying was being used to fuel some kind of demonic magic. "Station master, you're a genius," I said, suppressing a smile. Old Wu sighed. He knew the risk, but this was our only chance to move up in the world. Even if they were demon soldiers, he'd use them to impress the prince. Then, I played along with his paranoia. I made a cutting motion with my hand and suggested we dispose of Captain Ma and his wife after the job was done. Old Wu laughed, telling me I was surprisingly cold-blooded, though he doubted I could take them. Old Li, however, looked serious. He claimed he could handle it. I wanted to laugh. Old Li only had 50 combat points. Captain Ma would crush him in seconds. Once the tofu arrived, 40 of my clones, 20 laborers and 20 shopkeepers, showed up and went straight to work. Even the 50-year-old shopkeepers were swinging hammers until their hands bled, never uttering a single complaint. Old Wu watched them, whispering to himself that they were definitely cultists. They worked 20 hours a day with terrifying fanaticism. Every night, after Old Wu and Old Li fell asleep, the clones would line up in front of me and commit suicide. I would recycle their resource points and summon them fresh for the next day. I lost a few points each time due to the physical energy they spent working, but compared to the massive amount of labor they provided, the cost was nothing. By the time the sun rose, they were back at it, making old Wu tremble with fear at their undying energy. 2 months later, the big day arrived. Changfeng Station looked brand new. The walls were tall, the banners were flying, and the shops looked like they had been there for decades. We went for a restored look rather than a new look because it felt more historical, and it was cheaper. Old Wu stood on the gate tower, watching the dust cloud of the prince's approaching caravan. He had spent the last 30 minutes practicing his loyal servant expression. He had risked everything for this, even borrowing 3,000 taels from his cousin in the capital. If the trade route didn't reopen, he was a dead man. I stood beside him, adjusting my own face into a mask of absolute devotion. It was showtime. Old Wu kept adjusting the corners of his mouth, practicing his expression in front of me. He wanted to make sure his look of loyalty wasn't too oily, but not too stiff either. He'd been rehearsing his greeting for days. Loyal Banner Master of Changlong greets His Highness, the Prince of Jinan. Long live the prince. Technically, Banner Master wasn't even a real rank in the official hierarchy. It was a title we'd basically made up. But in this world, if the prince didn't object to it on the spot, the title became official. The prince was a busy man with 1,000 things to do. He wouldn't have time to worry about the specific title of a tiny station official. The prince's honor guard arrived first. 20 men marched into the station, and my system scan made my heart skip a beat. Even the guys holding the clear the way signs were rated at 150 points each. If things turned ugly, they could probably flatten this entire station in minutes. Behind them came 50 heavy cavalrymen in golden armor. Their average rating was 250 points. The clanking of their plates sounded like rolling thunder. Next came a man on a litter, the prince's advisor, Mr. Qingfeng. He wore a mask that hid everything except his eyes, which looked as deep and still as an ancient well. I scanned him. 15 points. I blinked. Aside from the old yellow dog wandering around the station, he was the lowest-rated human I'd ever seen. Behind the advisor was the prince's palanquin, carried by 8 porters who were 200 points each. 2 personal bodyguards walked beside the carriage, their halberds gleaming with a cold, lethal light. Those 2 were the heavy hitters, 480 points each. As the full 300-man procession entered, I realized something. The highest rating here was only 480. If a 1,500-point monster like Lin Xian suddenly charged out right now, the prince would be dead before his guards could blink. I finally understood that 850-point rich girls and 1,500-point scholars weren't the norm. Those elites were basically high-level bosses hanging out in a beginner village. In this world, power levels were a total mystery to most people. It's why old Li, at 50 points, thought he could take on Captain Ma, and why a 270-point thug thought he could fight Lin Xian. Most people lived in a state of constant hesitation. They didn't dare strike because they never knew if the guy across from them was a hidden master or a total fraud. I pushed those thoughts aside and fixed my face into a mask of devotion. The palanquin stopped. A sharp, high-pitched voice rang out through the air. Test the walls. 8 armored soldiers drew their blades and fanned out. They moved to different sections of the wall, jamming their sword tips into the gaps between the bricks and prying with all their might. The bricks didn't budge. Not even a speck of dust fell. Then, 16 more soldiers grabbed a heavy log and began ramming the walls. They hammered away for half an hour, but the fortress stood like a mountain. An officer knelt toward the carriage. The walls are as solid as bedrock. The brickwork is tight, and the rammed earth layers are thick. This is top-tier construction. The prince remained silent for a long time. Finally, a voice drifted from inside the carriage. Enter the station for rest. Old Wu, Old Li, and I all let out a long, silent breath. Old Wu leaned in and whispered that his brother in the capital had come through. The soldiers had tested the exact spots we'd reinforced the most. Later, the prince summoned Old Wu personally. Old Wu didn't dare look up, but he spoke with a voice full of 30 years of suppressed passion. He told the prince the station was fully populated, the merchants were ready, and the security was a wall of iron. Do you have any difficulties? The prince asked. I have no difficulties, Old Wu declared. Only a heart full of loyalty. And your subordinates? Every one of them is brave and capable, Your Highness. They are all ready to die for you. Is there one among them named Lin Yuan? Old Wu froze. Ah, yes. I didn't realize such a lowly person had caught your highness's eye. Dismissed, the prince said. I will see this Lin Yuan alone. When old Wu walked out, his face was pale. He looked at me with a mixture of terror and confusion, his mouth twitching as if he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. I didn't get it. Was there something on my face? I walked into the room and saw the prince. In that second, I understood exactly why old Wu looked like he'd seen a ghost. The prince had a rating of 45 points. But his face, it was identical to mine. He looked exactly like me, just a bit more haggard from a life of excess. I actually came here specifically to see you, the prince said slowly. I didn't hesitate. I dropped to one knee. Loyal banner, Master Lin Yuan greets his highness. Long live the prince. The prince stared at me and let out a cold laugh. You have quite the nerves. You see my face and you don't even flinch? You're remarkably calm. This lowly official only has a heart full of loyalty, I said firmly. I have no room for panic. He gave me a thin, joyless smile. Do you know who you are? I am just a minor banner master at Changfeng Station, humbled by your highness's attention. The truth, the prince said, his voice dropping, is that you are a body double I've been raising in secret at this station since you were a child. The words hit me like a thunderclap, but I kept my head down and my hands clasped. You were one of 3 backups, he continued. The other 2 were trained in etiquette and strategy, while you were left here to grow up wild. But the other 2 were discovered and assassinated. Because this station is so isolated, you are the last one left. I kept my expression neutral, but my mind was racing. Back when I was a survival streamer in the mountains, I spent my nights binge-watching dramas. This secret double plot was a classic trope. I wasn't surprised at all. The prince seemed satisfied with my lack of reaction. The emperor has summoned me to the capital next month. You will stay by my side for the next few weeks and learn my every move. When the time comes, you will face the emperor in my place. I bowed and accepted the command, but my fingernails dug into my palms. If this was the script we were following, then old Wu and old Li were in serious trouble. They knew too much. They were going to be silenced. The prince chuckled. Mr. Ching Feng was right. You're worried about your colleagues. I straightened my back. Your highness is wise. Can their lives be spared? The prince leaned back lazily. I will keep Wu Yicheng and Liang Guan in secret custody. Whether they live or die depends on how well you perform in the capital. He gave me the threat, then offered the carrot. If you complete the mission and return, I promise to release them. This station will be yours to manage forever. I bowed again. I thank your highness for your grace. Suddenly, the prince sat up, and the air in the room grew cold. This station is good. It's private. Not like the provincial city where the emperor's spies are everywhere. But to keep secrets, we need to tidy up the loose ends. Tidy up was just a fancy way of saying massacre. A few minutes later, everyone in the station, except old Wu and old Li, was dragged into the main street by the armored guards. My clones. A blade flashed, and Captain Ma's head hit the dirt. His wife let out a soul-shattering scream. Husband. She collapsed into the pool of blood, her fingers clawing at the stone cracks in the pavement. The guards dragged her toward the execution block. She looked up, her face stained with blood and tears, and suddenly she started laughing. It was a sound more terrifying than her crying. My family, she rasped, her eyes bloodshot. 3 generations of loyal service. Old Li and old Wu turned their heads away, tears streaming down their faces. They couldn't bear to watch. I was forced to stand there and witness it all, but inside, I was impressed. When I summoned her, I just picked a high-point female clone from a list of tavern girls. I didn't expect this level of acting. It just goes to show, when a girl doesn't have top-tier looks, she really has to master her craft to survive. The blade fell again. Madame Ma was gone. Lu Ruyan, now acting under the alias Ma Shaoling, stared blankly at the ground. Her lips trembled. It looked like her soul had been ripped out by the sight of her husband dying. She started muttering to herself about joining her brother and sister-in-law soon. It was a perfect performance, sorrowful but not over the top. I realized then that you don't become a top-tier courtesan just by having a pretty face. You need brains and talent. I gave a mental thumbs up. Around her, my other clones started their own performances. They wailed to the heavens, cursing the cruelty of the world and praying to be born into a peaceful era in their next lives. One by one, the blades fell. Their bodies were tossed into a massive pit and set ablaze. Watching the smoke rise, I felt a pang of pain in my chest. Not for the people. They were just clones, but for the cost. Do you have any idea how many resource points I just burned through? Jinan Wang, you wasteful bastard. One day, I'm going to make you pay me back 1,000 times over. For the next few days, I was busy. I spent my mornings learning royal etiquette from the eunuchs and my afternoons trailing behind the prince. He spent his time drinking and playing with mechanical beauties, women who were essentially brainwashed puppets. I stayed focused, scanning every single one of them into my system. They were all as beautiful as Lu Ruyan, but they lacked her soul and charm. After 20 days of this, the prince finally gave the order to move out. I was placed in a carriage with those puppet girls. My job was to practice my acting on them, perfecting my impression of the prince. I felt a flicker of pity for them. I knew that once this mission was over, they'd likely be killed to keep the secret. I decided not to talk to them. It's better not to get attached when you know someone is a walking corpse. Sure enough, the moment the procession left the provincial city for the capital, the prince's wife, Lady Jia, had them dragged away and beheaded. The caravan to the capital was massive. It stretched down the road, filled with treasures and exotic animals meant as gifts for the emperor. I saw a tiger worth 800 points, a black bear worth 700, and even a python worth 130. I scanned them all. It made me realize something. My friend, the rich girl, Lin Xian, was worth 850 points without any gear. She was literally stronger than a tiger. I used to think she was just a common martial artist, but she was actually on the level of a legendary hero. I told myself right then, when I get some free time, I'm hitting the gym. I need to learn some real kung fu. Since I was officially traveling as the prince, everyone treated me with extreme respect, even if the inner circle knew I was a fake. I didn't hold back. I demanded the best food, meat at every meal, specifically a whole roasted suckling pig. To keep people from getting suspicious about where the food went, I made a show of tearing the meat apart and stuffing it into my mouth, then used the system to instantly absorb the energy. To outsiders, it looked like I was a bottomless pit. I ate and ate, but my stomach never got bigger. Word spread fast. By the time we hit the halfway point, the locals were calling me the gluttonous prince. Storytellers and tea houses were already claiming I was the reincarnation of a god of food. During that 6-week journey, I absorbed 4,000 energy points. Having a bank account like that gave me serious confidence. I could now summon 3 clones as strong as Lin Xian at the same time. One to clear the path, one to carry me, and one to guard the rear. Plus, I could summon copies of the prince himself to act as my body doubles. It was the perfect loophole to the system's "can't clone myself" rule. As we neared the capital, the first assassination attempt finally happened. It was the middle of the night. I had a clone of the prince sleeping in the bed while I hid underneath it. Suddenly, the roof tiles shattered. A high-level assassin, worth 350 points, dropped into the room. He moved like lightning, driving 3 poisoned daggers into the throat, heart, and dantian of the figure on the bed. My clone died instantly. The assassin landed softly, a smug look on his face, thinking he'd succeeded. But then, a 700-point black bear I'd just summoned lunged out of the shadows. It pinned him to the floor with a roar that shook the walls. By the time the guards burst in, the assassin was gone, dissolved into the system for points. All that was left was a pile of messy clothes, a very confused-looking bear, and me, crawling out from under the bed looking grumpy and sleep-deprived. The guards swarmed the bear and poked it to death. The poor thing didn't even fight back. I'd set it to passive mode. I did the math in my head. Summoning the prince clone cost 45 points. The bear cost 700. But I recovered 350 from the assassin's body. The prince's poisoned corpse only gave me 10 points back, but I'd eat the bear meat later to recover those points. Total profit, 300 points. I whispered a silent "thank you" to the dead assassin for the gift. Later, a high-ranking investigator from the 6 doors looked at me with a massive headache. "So, you're telling me," he said, rubbing his temples, "that a black bear randomly fell through the roof, crushed the assassin, got dazed by the fall, and then the guards killed it?" I nodded solemnly. That's exactly what happened. Why was a bear on the roof? He asked. I puffed out my chest. That's what I want to know. Aren't you supposed to be protecting me? I want an explanation. His arrogance vanished. He remembered I was a prince, even if I looked like a weakling. After a long meeting, the investigators concluded that a peerless master must have grabbed a wild bear and thrown it through the roof as a warning or a prank. They figured anyone strong enough to carry a bear while sneaking past elite guards was someone they couldn't afford to mess with. The case was dropped. I ended up eating that bear over the next few days. My jaw actually started hurting from all the chewing. Between the constant eating and the stress, I was starting to lose that pretty boy look and gaining a bit of a rugged warrior vibe. Meanwhile, in a dark room somewhere in the city, shadows were whispering. You're saying our assassin was taken out by a master who throws bears as a warning? The gluttonous prince has a secret protector that powerful. When we finally reached the capital, the prince's personal army was sent to one hostel, while I, as the prince, was sent to the royal residence. 2 elite guards from the Dragon Guard were assigned to be my shadow security. Their names were Wang Chao and Ma Han. Both were worth 450 points. Are those your real names? I asked, curious. Wang Chao gave me a cold, silent stare. Ma Han just grunted 2 words, code names. I immediately disliked them. I'd hung out with an 800-point swordswoman who was friendly and a 1,500-point immortal who was polite. Who did these mid-tier 400-point losers think they were? While we are on duty, Ma Han said, his face like stone, you must follow our orders. Otherwise, we can't guarantee your safety. I rolled my eyes internally. Follow your orders? If my rich girl friend decided to assassinate me, she'd cut both of you into 4 pieces before you could blink. So, I asked, trying to dig for info, how many guys as strong as you are there in the Dragon Guard? Wang Chao snorted. We are here to protect you, not to chat. Wang Chao finally answered, his voice thick with suppressed impatience. He told me that in the Dragon Guard, there were at least 5 others with their level of skill. I quickly did the math and came to a conclusion. The Dragon Guard was a group of total losers. Still, I didn't let it show on my face. I just smiled politely and thanked them for clearing that up. The Qi residence was our destination. It was a temporary staging ground for princes before they received their official titles and lands. It had been empty for years. The walls were peeling, and the gardens were overgrown with weeds. It felt more like a haunted house than a palace. I, acting as the Prince of Jinan, had to stay here until the Emperor summoned me. When I asked the old butler when that would happen, he gave me a vague answer. There was no date. I understood the game immediately. It was a classic plot from those historical dramas. The Prince of Jinan was too powerful and getting rebellious, so the Emperor called him to the capital to pull his teeth and keep him under house arrest. As for how long, that depended entirely on the Emperor's mood. This was why the real prince sent me as a body double while he stayed back in the southwest to continue his rebellion. It was a predictable, unoriginal plan. For the next few days, Wang Chao and Ma Han stood by my side with their swords hugged to their chests. Everywhere I went, they followed. They didn't show me an ounce of respect. To them, I was a man under house arrest whose fate was already sealed. I was a dead man walking. They didn't care if I lived or died, as long as I didn't escape. My dislike for them grew every hour. I wasn't naturally a cold-blooded killer like some main characters in novels. These 2 were just doing their jobs, so I didn't feel like killing them just to replace them. But then came dinner. It was a joke. The food was worse than what I had at Changfeng Station. The vegetables were yellow and wilted. I asked the butler why a prince was being served slop. He told me that according to the rules, until a prince is summoned, his meals are provided at the lowest waiting standard. If I wanted better, I had to pay for it myself. Back when the Great Li dynasty was founded, things were tough, so they established this bitter meal standard to remind officials of the struggle. It stayed on the books because anyone important enough to see the emperor was usually rich enough to buy their own feasts. But I was a fake. My escort team had been dismissed, and no one was around to fund my lifestyle. They say it's hard to go from luxury back to poverty. During my month-long journey as the gluttonous prince, I had eaten the finest delicacies. Now, staring at this clear water soup, my stomach felt empty. Meanwhile, Wang Chao and Ma Han were scarfing it down like it was a 5-star meal. They clearly hadn't eaten anything good in their lives. I called the butler back. I asked if the rules specified how the food had to be cooked. He said no. I told him to bring a charcoal stove, pots, and spices to my quarters. I was going to cook for myself. I kicked Wang Chao and Ma Han out of the room and made them guard the door. Then, I got to work. I used the exotic animals I had scanned into my system earlier. On the first day, I tried peacock meat. It was terrible. On the second day, I made python soup. It was okay. By the fourth day, I tried mixing them. Still disgusting. By the fifth day, I gave up and just cooked some normal chicken wings, regretting that I hadn't scanned more common animals back then. On the sixth day, I decided it was time to move. I spent the whole day standing in the backyard, acting angry, while Wang Chao and Ma Han watched me like hawks. I pretended to be physically exhausted, swaying on my feet until I finally fainted and was carried to bed. But the man in that bed wasn't me. It was a 45-point clone of the prince. The Qi residence was massive and poorly guarded. The gatekeeper only had a combat power of 70. I needed a distraction. Suddenly, a beautiful courtesan in thin clothing appeared out of nowhere, performing acrobatic flips past the gate. It was Lu Ruyan, the top beauty from the provincial capital, whom I had summoned for 30 points. While the guard was busy staring at her, I slipped out into the city. I headed straight to a general store and sold a bundle of peacock feathers and 2 python skins I had produced. I walked out with 50 taels of silver. Finally, I wasn't broke anymore. 50 taels wasn't a fortune in the capital, but it was enough to rent a small, quiet courtyard. I could live comfortably here while waiting for a summons that would likely never come. If I ran out of money, I'd just summon more peacocks and pluck their feathers. It was a perfect loop. Living alone was lonely, though. It was time to summon some staff. My first choice was Lin Xian, the 1,500-point powerhouse. He might have been a wanted criminal once, but the rich girl had likely turned in his original head to clear the case. He was the perfect bodyguard. A flash of white light later, a naked Lin Xian appeared. I kept my eyes closed and tossed him a set of clothes. My second choice should have been the rich girl, but I felt a strange resistance to summoning her. Maybe it was because she had been so kind to me when I first arrived. I didn't want to treat her like just another summoned object. Instead, I brought back Madame Ma. She wasn't a beauty, but she was a brilliant actress, efficient, and we had a history. Old friends are better than new ones. Next was old Lu. He wasn't flashy, but he was reliable and had the street smarts that a reckless master like Lin Xian lacked. Finally, I summoned a top chef from the provincial city. Life is nothing without good food. I assigned everyone their roles in the small courtyard. I even told them they were free to date each other if they wanted. They were human-like beings with needs, after all. To top it off, I summoned a giant python to stay in the kitchen to catch rats and slap its tail if a stranger entered. Lin Xian turned out to have a hidden talent, disguise. He went out, bought some supplies, and transformed himself into a middle-aged scholar while turning me into a burly, bearded man. We hit the streets to explore. The chefs in the capital were on another level. After eating at a top-tier restaurant, I took a walk through their kitchen to scan the staff. When I got back to the courtyard, I had my old chef commit suicide and replaced him with the new capital-grade chef I just scanned. In just 2 hours, I had stopped being a sentimental person and became much more decisive. I spent the rest of the day wandering the capital, scanning shop managers, and touring the high-end brothels. My network was growing. I spent the rest of my time in the capital scanning every potential candidate I could find. While I was sipping tea at a local stall, I overheard a bizarre piece of gossip. Apparently, near the Prince Shire mansion, a stunning woman had been seen doing somersaults in the street while wearing very revealing clothes. She had caught the eye of the son of Duke Ying. He was so smitten that he took her in as a concubine immediately. But that wasn't enough for him. Rumor had it he was throwing a massive tantrum, demanding to make her his official wife. People said he acted like he was possessed. I sat there, stunned. Was Lu Ruyan really that charming? I knew she was the top courtesan of the provincial city, but I hadn't felt that kind of magic when we shared tea. Maybe my 5 taels of silver weren't enough to make her use her charms on me. Back at Changfeng Station, Old Wu and Old Li weren't worth her effort either. She probably just played a few tunes on her pipa to get rid of us. But now that she had met the son of a duke, she was finally showing her true colors. It's true what they say. People create their environment, but the environment also shapes the person. As I walked through the city, I realized that while there were many hidden experts in the crowds, most of them peaked at 200 or 300 points. Those two Balong guards I met earlier really did have a reason to be arrogant. They were almost on the same level as the Southern King's elite guards. When I first transmigrated, I ran into a super expert immediately. That encounter had skewed my perception of this world's power levels. I had been living like a coward, hiding my tail between my legs. But now, in the capital, I realized most heroes were just average. With a 1,500-point powerhouse like Lin Xian protecting me, I started to feel myself inflating. I began to strut. I walked with my chest out, radiating pure arrogance. That kind of walk invites trouble. Sure enough, someone slammed right into me. The impact sent me stumbling back 2 steps. I glared at Lin Xian. What was I paying this bodyguard for? Her employer just got shoved, and she didn't even blink. Was this really the reaction speed of a master? Then it hit me. You can't judge a master by normal standards. In Lin Xian's world, if someone ran into her, they would be the one flying backward or exploding. She didn't care if people bumped into her, so it didn't occur to her to care if they bumped into me. Her combat instincts were tuned for her own survival, not for professional protection. Only a trained bodyguard puts the client first. High-level instincts are hard to rewrite. Then again, maybe she wasn't that strong. She did get one shot by that rich girl earlier. Maybe her 1,500 points were all spent on raw physical strength and nothing else. Fine. Next time, I'd bring someone else. I finally looked at the guy who hit me. He was a typical capital bully. My system scanned him, 85 points. Strong for a common thug, but a fly compared to me. Who the hell are you supposed to be? The bully barked. Whose house do you serve? You walk pretty tall for a slave. A slave? Me? I was the Southern King. Well, technically not right now. And who are you? I countered. I'm your grandfather, he sneered. I'm the 4th son of the general of the Left Wu Guard. I'd read enough web novels to know that a 4th son usually didn't mean much unless he was the legal heir. Besides, I had been a king. A general was nothing to me. I couldn't hide the look of pure disgust on my face. That look actually rattled him. Usually, when he dropped his father's title, people cowered. To look at him with such contempt, I had to be the son of a marquis at the very least. He was a bully, but he wasn't stupid. He had bumped into me because I had a certain loyal servant vibe about me, the kind of confidence you only see in people who serve the emperor directly. He looked at Lin Xian. She was just standing there with a smirk, looking at him like he was already dead. That was the kind of dark humor only a true master possessed. The bully's attitude flipped in seconds. He bowed low. I am Xia Wubbing. My friends call me Xia the Fourth. I didn't see you there, friend. Please, forgive my rudeness. May I ask your name? The sudden change made Lin Xian and me blink in surprise. But you don't hit a man who's smiling at you. There was no need for Lin Xian to punch him into paste over a shoulder bump. My name is Chong Wei, I said, hesitating for a second. Xia the Fourth clearly knew I was using a fake name, but he didn't call me out. Instead, he insisted on taking me for a drink. We went to a tavern and knocked back 3 rounds. Once the atmosphere was warm, he leaned in. You're the Southern King who just entered the capital under guard, aren't you? I froze. Was Lin Xian's disguise technique really that bad? This guy recognized me instantly. Lin Xian really was useless at everything except looking cool. Seeing my expression, Xia laughed and clapped his hands. He whispered in my ear, I've heard the Southern King loves snatching common women and ruining good families. It just so happens I have the same hobby. No wonder I felt a connection to you. Why don't we go find some pretty girls to harass? I was already planning to kill him to keep my identity secret. Now that he had confessed to being a predator, my mind was made up. We walked out of the tavern, arms around each other like old pals, and stepped into a quiet alley. I sent a silent command to Lin Xian, kill him. No blood, In a flash, Lin Xian used internal energy to shatter his brain. He dropped instantly. I spent 85 resource points and summoned him right back. The newly summoned Xia the Fourth looked a bit dazed. I gave him my orders. Give me all your money. Don't tell anyone who I am. Now, go away and do whatever. He reached into his robe, handed me 300 taels in banknotes, and turned to leave. Wait, I called out. He stopped. From now on, no more harassing women. Be a good person. Study hard, practice your martial arts, and prepare to take over your family business. He looked confused. Me? A good person? But he couldn't disobey. From that day on, Xia the Fourth was a changed man. He became a scholar, a warrior, and a local hero. With the 300 taels, I could have moved to a bigger mansion. But I was lazy, and the small courtyard was fine for now. I took a moment to reflect. If I wanted to experience life in the capital, I had to stop being so arrogant. Walking around like I owned the place was getting me recognized. Plus, having Lin Xian around made me feel too powerful for my own good, even if she couldn't actually guarantee my safety. I realized that staying in the capital with Lin Xian was risky. Too much power made me arrogant, and arrogance got me noticed. I returned to my small courtyard and decided to change tactics. I left Lin Xian behind to guard the house, and brought old Lu and Mrs. Ma out with me instead. They were normal people with power levels around 100. Walking the streets with them felt relaxing, almost like being back in a world where everyone was equal. I grew up in a society that valued equality, and I found that I didn't actually enjoy bullying the weak. Treating people with respect gave me a sense of peace I hadn't felt since I arrived here. As we walked, I noticed Mrs. Ma was practically glued to old Lu's side. It turned out she had a thing for honest, sturdy men like him. I watched them for a moment and decided to make a change. Since the original Captain Ma was obsessed with martial arts and never cared for her anyway, I mentally renamed her Mrs. Lu. Old Lu looked completely overwhelmed by her affection. He shot me a desperate look, begging for instructions. I gave him a simple command: follow your instincts. Immediately, his stiff shoulders slumped. He stopped resisting and leaned into her. It turned out his instincts liked her just fine. He had just been acting tough. I handed old Lu 5 taels of silver as a salary, and within half an hour, he was lugging around bags of everything Mrs. Lu wanted to buy. He was the perfect bodyguard. He caught a pickpocket trying to snatch my wallet and spotted a scammer trying to fake an injury before they could even get close. I almost teared up. This was what I needed. Everything felt perfect, except for one thing. I was missing a partner. "Where are you, my little rich girl?" I wondered. Right then, she appeared. She was standing right in front of me, biting into a steamed bun. A glowing number hovered over her head, 1100. Her martial arts had improved. Lin Xian's disguise technique was good enough that she didn't recognize me at first. She stared for 2 seconds, then her eyes widened. "Are you that guy from Changfeng Station?" she asked, stepping closer. Suddenly, I felt a wave of inferiority. She was a warrior with 1,100 points. I was a guy whose base stats weren't even 50. The gap between us was bigger than the gap between a monkey and a gorilla. I was a fake prince, a lowly station worker playing with cheats. Using a system to pick up girls felt pathetic. Your martial arts, you've improved," I stammered, losing my cool. She beamed. "You noticed? After I killed that villain Lin Xian, I claimed the bounty and bought some medicinal supplements. I finally broke through." "What are you doing in the capital? A delivery mission?" "Yes," I lied, feeling like a delivery driver bumping into his high school crush. "I'm here to deliver an urgent letter." She was genuinely happy to see me. She walked beside me, chatting away about the best food and sights in the capital. But then, a shadow blocked our path. My heart nearly stopped. Standing there was a tall, gaunt man with sunken eyes and dark circles that made him look like a panda. Hovering over his head was a terrifying number, 1900. He stared at me with a hollow, predatory gaze. "Junior sister," he rasped. "Who is this?" She didn't sense the danger. "He's the guy from the southwest I told you about. The handsome one." The man's eyes turned murderous. "Handsome? Really? I don't see it." Old Lu stepped forward, shielding me. Mrs. Lu hesitated for a split second, then stepped forward too. They could feel it. This man was on the verge of a psychotic break. A normal crazy person was one thing, but a 1900-point monster? One punch from him would hit like 12 galloping horses. I'd be turned into a red mist instantly. Even if I summoned Lin Xian right now, she only had 1,500 points and no weapon. She'd be slaughtered. I had to surrender. But how? If I said, "I'm not handsome," he might think I was mocking him. The panda man was tensing up, ready to strike. I bowed deeply, my voice steady but humble. "I only met this lady by chance. We have no relationship, and I have no intentions toward her whatsoever." The tension in the man's body vanished. He slumped back into his sickly, hunched posture, satisfied. But the girl looked at me with pure shock and deep disappointment. She had made her feelings clear, and I had just drawn a hard line between us. She quickly masked it, realizing that for a normal person like me, this was the only way to stay alive. She looked at the ground, likely realizing that our worlds were too far apart. "I should go," I said, giving her a formal salute. She bowed back in silence. Once we were 100 paces away, I breathed again. "Old Lou, thanks for standing in front of me. But if we ever meet him again, don't do that. I'd rather die alone than have you two lose your happiness." Old Lou couldn't disobey, but he answered with tears in his eyes. I made a vow right then. This humiliation would be repaid 100-fold. If I couldn't have love today, I would have money. Back at the courtyard, I summoned a tiger for 800 points. Lin Xian killed it instantly with an arrow to the throat. A specialist chef skinned it, and the Liu couple processed the hide. I recycled the tiger meat for 780 resource points. The math was simple. A high-quality tiger skin now only cost me 20 points. I was about to become very, very rich. The tiger meat was equivalent to about 20 pounds of beef or 60 pounds of tofu in terms of resource points. Out of curiosity, Old Lou cut off a large chunk to cook for everyone, but the consensus was unanimous. It tasted terrible. However, the pelt was a different story. A perfect tiger skin is a rare treasure with no fixed price. I started selling them at 1,500 taels each. As I saturated the market, the price slowly dropped to 1,000 taels before sales finally stalled. By then, I had raked in over 100,000 taels. That was a year's worth of income for a top-tier merchant. I finally decided to stop. Processing leather is a filthy, stinking business. The stench in my small courtyard wouldn't dissipate, so I was forced to upgrade. I bought a massive 3-entry mansion. With the new space, I had the perfect excuse to host frequent banquets. This allowed me to order a whole pig and massive amounts of dried tofu every single day. I wanted more meat, but pigs take time to grow. You can't just conjure them out of thin air with money. The supply around a city is strictly tied to the population's needs. Even if I paid to expand the farms, I'd have to wait until next year for the harvest. During this time, I asked Lin Xian to teach me martial arts. He was a powerhouse, but as a teacher, he was a disaster. Everything was obvious to him, while I struggled with the basics. His teaching method mostly involved sarcasm and insults. Eventually, our student-teacher relationship soured so badly we hated each other. I got so fed up that I actually killed him and summoned him again just to reset his resentment levels toward me. Old Lou's whirlwind kick was much easier to learn. After half a month, I was actually getting the hang of it. Old Lou kept praising me as a martial arts genius. I'm naturally paranoid, so I spent days wondering if he was mocking me. I even considered docking his pay. You have to watch your mental health in this business, or you'll end up like that panda man, or me, thinking everyone is out to get you. I'm not being sarcastic, I promise. Between the high-protein diet and constant training, my personal combat power broke the 60-point mark. I felt confident enough to take on a 45-point True King in a one-on-one fight. To test it, I summoned a True King just to brawl. I absolutely demolished him. He had no hidden tricks like characters in novels. He was just a total pushover. I spent a few days beating him up repeatedly until I finally believed Old Lou. I really was a genius. I gave Old Lou a bonus. I might not be able to beat that crazy guy following the rich lady yet, but I was improving every day. One morning, a new neighbor moved in next door. I walked outside and saw Xia Wubbing, the general's son I had killed and revived to be a good person, directing the movers. I tucked my hands behind my back and approached him. "Is this your house?" He saw me and bowed instantly. "Greetings, master." "Yes, it's mine. I'm lending it to a friend." I felt a pang of regret. If I'd known he had a spare mansion, I could have stayed here for free and saved my money. "What kind of friend?" "The heir to the Duke of Ing," Xia Wubbing answered honestly. "He had a falling out with the Duke over a woman and left home. You told me to be a good person, so I thought this was a great chance to help someone in need." I stared at him. He really was a good person now. In public, just call me young Master Lin. Don't call me Master. Keep it low-key. You're making me sound like a creep from a weird movie. "Understood," he shouted. He was still being too formal, which felt suspicious. Just act natural, I told him. Be yourself. That was a mistake. Xiao Wubbing immediately relaxed and threw an arm around my shoulders. Young Master Lin, let me introduce you to the Duke's heir. It's good for your network. Might help your career in the capital. I hate it when men I barely know get touchy. I almost killed him again right there. He dragged me into the inner courtyard, shouting, Song Qingyu, come meet a friend of mine. Xiao Wubbing had zero social awareness. He led me straight into the private quarters, where we saw the heir, Song Qingyu, and his consort, Lu Rian. Bringing a stranger into the inner chambers to see a man's women is a massive insult. Xiao Wubbing didn't care. He still treated Lu Rian like a common courtesan. Song Qingyu was living in Xia's house, so he had to swallow his pride. He stood up to greet us with a forced smile. Lu Rian rose and gave a graceful bow. I sent her a mental command. Pretend you don't know me. Keep acting. She was wearing a black silk dress, her head slightly bowed. Her eyes were filled with a sorrow so deep it looked ready to overflow, yet her face remained calm. It was a hauntingly beautiful contrast. She looked as if she were staring at a willow branch on the wall, or perhaps at nothing at all. This is the heir to the Duke of Ying, Xiao Wubbing announced. And this is his concubine, Lu Ming. That was her alias. Song Qingyu's face turned red with rage. He gritted his teeth. Lu Ming is not my concubine. She is the woman I intend to marry officially. Master Xia, watch your tongue. Lu Rian, or Lu Ming, looked down at her pale hands, her fingers twisting together. The sorrow in her eyes deepened until a single, large teardrop rolled down her cheek. I had to hand it to her. She was a world-class actress. Song Qingyu sat beside her and took her hand. She looked at him, a bitter but happy smile touching her lips. Xiao Wubbing turned to me. And this is young Master Lin. He lives next door and has the strength of 10,000 men. If you ever run into trouble, just send for him. I really shouldn't have let this guy be himself. He was already making decisions for me. But if I didn't, he'd be too submissive and look out of place. Strength of 10,000 men. He was going to get me killed. Though, if I counted my clones, he wasn't technically lying. Young Master Lin is kind-hearted and loves helping people, Xiao Wubbing continued. It was only after meeting him that I realized the error of my ways and chose the path of virtue. I stared at him, wondering if this clone was intentionally trying to annoy me. I sent him a mental order. Asterisk, go help the heir move furniture and sweep the yard. Don't just stand there. Asterisk. Xiao Wubbing immediately turned into a busy bee, scrubbing and lifting like his life depended on it. Song Qingyu tried to stop him. It was scandalous for a general's son to do manual labor, but Xia insisted. Song Qingyu turned to me, impressed. Master Xia has changed quite a bit. I had no idea you were the one who influenced him. I am truly moved. Since the connection was already made, I couldn't let it go to waste. I live right next door, I said. If you're ever free, come over for a drink. My chef is actually quite talented. I told the heir that my chef was talented, but that was an understatement. After moving in, the yard was massive, so I summoned several top-tier chefs from my system. I let them exchange their secret techniques and taught them modern recipes I remembered from my past life. At that moment, the food in the Chang residence was likely the best in the entire world. Lu Rian, ever the loyal ally, smiled at her husband. The young master is clearly a man of substance. If he calls it a talent, it must be a feast. Why don't you go, my lord? Song Qingyu listened to her, but he didn't want to leave her behind. He hesitated for a second before deciding to bring her along. We all headed next door, leaving poor Xiao Wubbing behind to sweat and scrub the floors. At the banquet, the heir took one bite, and his face changed instantly. What kind of flavor is this? I acted casual. That's sweet and sour pork. It's a family secret. Try this one next. By the end of the meal, everyone was happy. Between my refined manners, thanks to the system's training, and my reputation for hidden strength, I had cultivated an air of mystery. Lu Rian kept dropping subtle praises, and though the heir didn't know my true identity yet, he had completely lost any trace of looking down on me. After dinner, I had the leftovers packed for Xiao Wubbing and the workers. A cheer went up from next door as they started their own feast. Late that night, the heir whispered to Lu Rian in their bedroom. Rian, that young Master Lin is no ordinary man. He has the bearing of royalty. Even his servants treat him with terrifying respect. Did you see the one carrying the sword? He walked across a puddle without leaving a ripple. A master of that caliber, yet he bows to Lin Yuan. He pulled her closer. Even the food. I doubt the emperor eats that well. And did you notice? He isn't swayed by beauty. He looked at you, a woman of your grace, and saw only an equal. There was no lust in his eyes. Such men are rare. I wasn't actually a saint. I just had high standards for beauty after living in the modern world. Lu Rian looked at him with genuine admiration. Your observation skills are incredible, my lord. I am moved. Xiao Wubbing said the young master has the strength of 10,000 men. The heir continued. I believe it now. A brat like Xiao wouldn't change his nature unless someone beat the soul out of him. Lin Yuan is a man we can trust. If I am ever away and danger finds you, run to his house. Hide there. I'll come for you when I can. To tell his wife to hide in another man's house showed a massive amount of trust. Even a seasoned courtesan like Lu Ruyan was touched. Her eyes grew red with real emotion. The days blurred together. Occasionally, the Mrs. Lu clone would visit the Prince of Jinnan's double at the Prince of Shi's mansion to deliver food. The double spoke with a thick southwestern accent, so the guards just assumed he was a servant brought from afar. They didn't care about him as long as he didn't escape. The real Prince of Jinnan, however, was living a nightmare. He wasn't into men, but he hadn't seen a woman in a month. He was guarded by two ugly, silent brutes who wouldn't even let him entertain himself in peace. The food was trash, there was no music, and he was miserable. When he saw Mrs. Lu, he grabbed her hand like a dying man in a desert. Mrs. Lu pulled away coldly. Your Highness, please. I am a married woman. Control yourself. The prince broke down and sobbed for half an hour, mourning his lost lifestyle. Finally, he remembered the news. The palace sent word. They said the meeting with the emperor is happening soon. I just have to wait. Mrs. Lu was annoyed. Asterisk, you made me wait 30 minutes for that? No wonder your region is a mess with a ruler like you. Asterisk. I didn't think the news was that urgent. In the world of bureaucracy, soon could mean anything. I figured I could keep enjoying my peaceful life in the capital. But peace is a fragile thing. The danger for Lu Rian arrived sooner than expected. Lin Xian was napping under the eaves when she suddenly bolted upright. One of the assassins trying to sneak into the heir's house next door made the mistake of stepping on our roof. Lin Xian didn't hesitate. She lunged upward and skewered him midair. She woke me up and reported the situation. I told her to go next door and handle it. By the time she hopped the wall, several assassins had Lu Rian cornered. They were busy gloating, the classic villain mistake. Lin Xian moved like a blur, cutting them down in seconds. Lu Rian was shaken. She instinctively tried to use her charms on Lin Xian, complaining about the messy blood, but Lin Xian was a woman of iron. It had zero effect. Meanwhile, Song Qingyu was at the military camp when a messenger from his father arrived. The message was clear. Asterisk, the woman has been dealt with. Don't worry about it anymore. Just come home. Asterisk. The heir turned pale. He raced back to the house, but Lu Rian was gone. There was only blood on the floor. Panicked, he hammered on my door. Old Lu let him in. Don't worry, young Master Song. Lady Lu is safe. He walked into the courtyard and saw me crouching over a group of assassins. They were all tied up, very much alive. If he had seen Lin Xian kill them earlier, he would have been confused, but I had already absorbed and resummoned them as my own loyal puppets. The heir looked at their faces and trembled with rage. These were his father's personal elite guards. By killing them, I had just declared war on a duke, and the fallout was going to be massive. I had the assassins right where I wanted them. All of them were captured alive, leaving me with plenty of room to maneuver. That was when Lu Ruyan finally rushed out from the back courtyard. She threw herself into Song Qingyu's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Seeing her like that made the heir's blood boil. He drew his sword, ready to butcher the tied-up assassins on the spot, but I stepped in and stopped him. Heaven values all life, young Master Song, I said, sounding as virtuous as possible. These men were only following orders. The heir was moved. He bowed deeply to me, his voice trembling with gratitude. Brother Chong, your nobility knows no bounds. I will never forget this. Please, look after my wife for a moment. I'm going back to the Duke's estate to settle this with my father. I stopped him again. You're too angry right now. Facing your father like this will only end in disaster. Once a father-son bond is severed, it's nearly impossible to mend. Why not let these assassins go back first? Let them deliver a message so the Duke has time to prepare himself. The assassins, sensing a chance to live, scrambled to agree. The young master is right. Let us go back and explain the situation. We'll tell the Duke about your sincerity and the hardships you've faced. He's a fair man. He'll understand. They even referred to Lu Ruyin as the young madam, which clearly pleased Song Qingyu. He calmed down immediately, released the men, and took his beloved back inside to comfort her. Before I let the assassins leave, I pulled them aside. I gave them very specific instructions on what to say and added one final command. From now on, you must turn over a new leaf. Do good deeds. Be better men. They grumbled but agreed. From that day on, the capital gained a few more good Samaritans. Word even started spreading that the Duke's personal guards were becoming local heroes, helping the elderly and saving people in distress. Back at the Duke's estate, the Duke himself was listening to the report with a heavy frown. So, you're telling me this young Master Chong captured you all alive and then just let you go? Yes, my lord. We dare not lie. The Duke leaned back, processing the story. You went there to kill the woman, but my son tried to kill you instead? And then the woman, the courtesan, begged for your lives to save the father-son bond. He sat in silence for a long time before letting out a cold snort. He's got some skill, I'll give him that. I wasn't sure if he was talking about me or Lu Ruyin. These guards weren't his strongest fighters, but they were his most trusted. Their strength was on par with the Imperial Guards. Not long ago, a massive scandal hit the courts when someone subdued a giant bear assassin at the Southern King's guest house. These guards were far more dangerous than a bear, yet they had been taken down instantly, without a single scratch on them. According to them, they didn't even see the move coming. If this news got out, the court would be in an uproar. The Duke realized he had stumbled upon someone he couldn't afford to provoke. He sighed deeply. Fine, it's just a woman. As long as I don't officially recognize her, she's just a mistress. Let him play house for a while. He'll get bored eventually. He sent word to his son, calling a truce. He wouldn't interfere with the relationship for now, though the marriage was still off the table. With that crisis averted, I found myself enjoying my new role as a moral guide. They say with great power comes great responsibility. If you have superhuman abilities and only use them to bully people, you're just a villain. I even thought about telling Lin Xian to go out and do good deeds, but I still needed her as a bodyguard. Maybe when I had more points and more powerhouses, I'd send her out to be a hero. For now, I needed to learn how to fight. I scrolled through my summoning menu and picked a monk I had scanned back in the southwest. He cost 430 points. I figured a monk would have a better temperament for teaching a beginner than Lin Xian. When I summoned him, he appeared stark naked. He pressed his palms together, looking every bit the enlightened master despite the lack of clothes. Lin Xian took one look at him and scoffed. If it isn't Wu Sei, the lecherous monk. The monk didn't blink. He bowed to her. This humble monk is indeed Wu Sei. Greetings, Grandmaster Lin Xian. I nearly choked on my tea. Lecherous monk? Put some pants on before you talk to me. He smiled serenely. Umitba. Form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. Pants are but an illusion. Why cling to clothes when the physical world is void? My lord, you are too attached to appearances. I didn't care about the rules of the system. I jumped up and smacked him right on the forehead. I say one word, and you give me a lecture? Speak English. He kept smiling. Please, my lord, calm your anger. I worry you might hurt your hand. My hand already hurts. I snapped. What can you teach me? The Vajra demon-subduing fist. The Arhut tiger-taming palm. And Umitba, the secret art of dual cultivation. I would be honored to share that one with you. I hesitated. Is that last one legitimate? Lin Xian and the monk both started laughing. The answer was pretty obvious. I decided to start with the Arhut tiger-taming palm. Luckily, I had a literal tiger at the station to practice on. The next day, the Duke received another report. One of his spies had sneaked into my yard disguised as a vegetable delivery man. My lord, I saw him training. He was fighting a massive, white-browed tiger with his bare hands. The tiger couldn't even touch him, yet he wasn't actually hurting the beast. He was using a gentle, controlling force. The Duke's face paled. A man under 20 with that kind of control? That wasn't human. He remembered the tiger skins my men had been selling in the city. He pulled one out from his collection and examined it. The skin was perfect. No spear holes, no messy cuts. The only way to do that was to kill the tiger with internal energy, vibrating its heart to a stop before skinning it. Doing that once was impressive. Doing it 100 times meant this man hunted tigers like they were rabbits. The Duke was officially terrified. Meanwhile, I finished my morning workout and wiped the sweat from my brow. I didn't have a status screen for myself, but I could feel my progress. My internal value was probably over 70 points now. I was catching up to the elites like CSC and Old Wu. Just wait, guys, I thought. I'm coming to get you out of that mess. Feeling a bit cocky, I summoned the 45-point Southern King just to use him as a punching bag. I beat him until he was a bloody mess. It felt great. Who says bullying the weak isn't fun? Maybe I was becoming a bit of a villain myself. I decided to keep a manual log of my progress to make it feel official. Name: Chong Luo. Power level: 70. Skills: Arhut Tiger Taming Palm. Beginner, Whirlwind Kick. Intermediate. Pending: Vajra Fist. Dual Cultivation. Still debating this one. During the lessons, the monk tried to get handsy with Old Lu's wife. I had to shut that down immediately and forced him to turn over a new leaf, too. I made him vow to give up lust and do only good deeds. With his new moral compass, he was basically a saint now. I ultimately skipped the dual cultivation art. The monk talked it up like it was the ultimate power, but his total value was only 400. He couldn't even hold a candle to Lin Xian's 1500. Clearly, the path of the lecher was no match for the path of the warrior. I was back in the courtyard practicing my forms when Old Lu came running in. Master, young Master Song is here to see you. Young Master Song didn't come alone. He brought a friend. That's how networking works. You meet one person, and suddenly you're introduced to the whole circle. I went out to greet them and immediately scanned the person standing next to him. My system pinged 650 points. On top of that, she was a total beauty. Right now, most experts I encountered hovered between 200 and 450. Anyone reaching 500 was rare, but once you crossed 600, there was a massive leap in quality. It was a bottleneck, likely a transition into a different realm of martial arts. Most people stayed stuck at 450 forever. I was nowhere near that level yet, so I hadn't bothered learning the specific names for the ranks. Whether they called it the Golden Flesh Realm or the True Chi Realm didn't matter to me yet. This woman had clearly broken through. Her path forward would be smooth until she hit the next major wall. Young Master Song fanned himself, smiling brightly. I wonder if young Master Chong has any extra food at his table this afternoon. My younger brother, Song Shangyun, wants to grab a bite. I looked at Shangyun and nearly rolled my eyes. What brother? They weren't even trying to hide it. At the very least, she could have put on a better disguise. But as a man currently playing the role of the Prince of Jinnan's chosen proxy, I had to keep my composure. Of course, I said with a smile. Please, both of you come in. The woman kept her head down as she entered, not daring to look me in the eye. Even at the table, she remained hunched over. Everyone present knew she was a woman, but since it was our first meeting, I couldn't be too forward. I stuck to small talk with young Master Song, chatting about trivial things. But the moment she tasted the food, her eyes lit up. She forgot her act and looked straight at me. This is delicious. It's salt and pepper pork ribs, I explained. The secret is in the salt. My family uses a secret method to mix finely ground spices into the salt to create a perfect balance. She beamed at me, stealing glances at my face every few seconds. She looked more and more satisfied with what she saw. I was screaming internally. Asterisk, don't fall for a man just because of one dish. How is that any different from liking a guy for his money? This isn't pure at all. Besides, my chef cooked this, not me. Asterisk. Still, I maintained my prince's proxy grace, making sure everyone felt included in the conversation. The girl relaxed as she ate. By the time the shrimp oil fried rice came out, she was so enthusiastic that she accidentally bit a chunk right out of the porcelain bowl. The table went silent. Young Master Song looked horrified. The girl's face turned bright red, and she frantically tried to spit the ceramic shards into her sleeve. Her ears were so hot, they could have fried an egg. I stepped in to save the situation. It seems little young Master Song has recently broken through a cultivation bottleneck. Your control over your internal chi isn't quite steady yet. She nodded frantically. Yes, I just broke through. That's exactly it. I laughed heartily. I was the same when I broke through. I'd snap my chopsticks without meaning to. I had to pick up teacups like they were made of eggshells, otherwise, I'd end up soaked in water and broken glass. Old Lou's wife quickly brought a fresh bowl of rice. The girl held the new bowl, but looked longingly at the half portion left in the broken one. She was stuck in a dilemma. I watched her, wondering if she'd eventually cheat on a future husband if she met a better chef. Finally, she threw etiquette out the window, dumped the old rice into the new bowl, and kept eating. After lunch, we moved to the pavilion in the side courtyard. A cool early summer breeze carried the scent of locust flowers. My mind wandered. If a 650-point fighter could bite through a bowl, what about my little rich lady at 1100 points? Did she accidentally chew up her chopsticks when she ate? The silence was broken when the girl stood up and cupped her fists. Young Master Chong, I've heard your martial arts have reached an incredible realm. I was wondering if you'd trade a few blows with me? I'd love some guidance. I froze. I looked at young Master Song, then back at her. Technically, I couldn't beat her with even one finger, but in their eyes, I was a god-tier master who could crush her instantly. Why would she want to spar? They saw my hesitation and interpreted it as me thinking the power gap was too large to be worth my time. But she persisted. Please, young Master Chong, teach me. My internal alarms were screaming. I couldn't fight her. A single punch from a 650-point powerhouse would be like getting kicked by a horse. Even if she held back, I'd probably cough up blood and die. Wait, why did she want to spar? Was this some noble courtship ritual? Like in those stories where the girl loses and falls into the hero's arms, claiming her heart was moved? Young Master Song wasn't stopping her. He was practically cheering her on. They wanted me as a brother-in-law. The Duke's estate wouldn't be this reckless with a daughter's marriage unless they knew who I was. They must have guessed, or investigated, that I was the Prince of Jinan. It was a perfect match of status. She cupped her fists a third time. If I accepted, it meant I was interested. If I refused, it was a rejection. Look, girl, whether I like you or not, I can't take this fight. It will literally kill me. I scrambled for a polite way to decline without losing face. At the last second, I went with a safe excuse. To be honest, I have to meet a very important person soon. That person dislikes violence and fighting. If I spar with you today, I fear I might offend them and ruin my business. The important person was obviously the Emperor. Whether the Emperor actually hated fighting didn't matter. It was the perfect shield. Young Master Song and the girl looked stunned. To them, I was hinting that the Emperor was planning to arrange a marriage for me. The political implications were massive. The Emperor, the Southwest, the capital nobles, and the Southern families were all locked in a complex power struggle. If the Emperor and the Southwest joined forces, the nobles would lose their piece of the trade routes. By refusing her spar, they thought I was officially siding with the Emperor over the Duke's estate. I had no idea my random excuse had been dissected into a geopolitical manifesto. The girl knew this was a political move, but being rejected to her face still stung. Combined with the thought that she might never eat this food again, her eyes welled up with tears. I couldn't stand seeing a beautiful woman cry, and I knew she was a total foodie. I tried to soften the blow. The sparring is off the table, but little young Master Song, if you enjoy the food here, there will always be a seat for you at my table. The siblings were shocked once again. I had basically just made a public declaration. I had no idea that my simple offer of a meal would be taken as a marriage proposal. To a daughter of the Duke's estate, being a concubine for the Prince of the South was a massive insult. There was no formal ceremony, no traditional gifts, just an extra pair of chopsticks at my table. Miss Song's face flushed as tears streamed down her cheeks. You go too far, she sobbed. She couldn't take the humiliation any longer and bolted out of the room, crying her heart out. Young Master Song stood there, his emotions a tangled mess. He didn't even know what to say to me anymore. Prince, you are a powerful man and a peerless martial artist, he sighed, his voice heavy. It's natural for you to be arrogant. But the Duke's estate is no soft target. Fine, fine. We used the sparring match as a test to leave ourselves some room to maneuver. At least we still have our friendship. I'll let the elders discuss the specific interests and concessions with you later. He exchanged a few more polite words before rushing off to chase after his sister. I stood there, completely baffled. Under the eaves, the monk Wu Sei pressed his palms together, his face full of pity. Great mercy, great compassion, he muttered, looking like he was witnessing a tragedy. 3 days after that martial arts recruitment farce, the moment I had been waiting for finally arrived. An imperial decree reached the prince's mansion. The emperor wanted to see me tomorrow at noon. My clone, the one playing the Prince of the South, actually had tears in his eyes when he heard the news. His days of torment were finally over. He wouldn't have to deal with the likes of Wang Chao and Mahan anymore. As I prepared to enter the palace, my mind raced through every possible disaster. Maybe they'd realize I was a fake and chop my head off. Or maybe they'd think I was the real prince and chop my head off anyway. Over the last few days, I had been eating and drinking like a king, and my resource points had climbed over 6,500. I could summon multiple versions of Lin Xian now. With that much protection, I figured I could at least fight my way out if things went south. When the time came, an old eunuch led the way. He looked excited, stealing glances at me with a strange sort of reverence. I gave him a gentle smile, and he looked like he was about to melt. "Your Highness," he whispered happily. "You look exactly like the late emperor did in his youth." I kept my face neutral, but inside, I was rolling my eyes. Of course I did. I was supposed to be his son. After a series of security checks and freshening up, I was led to the imperial study rather than the main hall. The old eunuch leaned in to whisper a final warning. "The empress is also there. Make sure to greet her as well. Kneel when you enter, and don't get up until the emperor tells you to." I put on my most loyal, Zhong Yongjin face and stepped inside. I dropped toward the floor immediately. "The loyal prince of the south greets the emperor and empress. Long live the emperor. Long life to the empress." "You may rise," a male voice said. I didn't even let my knees touch the ground before I snapped back up to a standing position. A woman's laughter rang out. "Prince of the South? Don't you mean the loyal station master, Chong Luo?" My heart skipped a beat. I knew it. There was no way I could have hidden the truth forever. The prince's convoy had over 300 people. It was bound to be crawling with imperial spies. Even a minor official like the vice minister of personnel had managed to plant someone. I decided to play it cool. I straightened my back and looked them in the eye. Yesterday, I was a station master. Today, I am the Prince of the South. Then I actually looked at the couple in front of me, and my jaw nearly dropped. Something was very wrong. The empress was a giant, nearly 6'3" and built like a fortress. The emperor, sitting next to her, was barely 5'5", looking thin and frail. They were both smiling at me. "You've had a long journey from the southwest," the empress said warmly. "We're all family here," the emperor added, gesturing to a seat. "Don't just stand there. Sit." He pulled up a chair for himself, and the empress followed suit. I was confused, but their friendly attitude told me one thing. My identity as the prince was secure. The real prince of the South thought he was being clever by sending a body double to the capital, but he hadn't realized the trap. Whoever the capital recognized as the prince was the prince. The guy left behind in the southwest was now the fake. The emperor turned to the eunuch behind him. "Everyone is here. Bring out the pot." A copper charcoal hot pot was carried in. The royal couple started cooking meat and vegetables right there in front of me, acting like we were at a casual family dinner. It was surreal. I scanned them quickly and nearly choked. The empress had a staggering 2,800 combat points. The emperor? A measly 32. He was weaker than a common civilian. The empress happily scooped some meat into the emperor's bowl. "Eat up," she said, before looking at me. "Why are you just watching? I heard you're a real foodie, prince. Get in there." "Then I won't be polite," I said, picking up my chopsticks. After a few bites, the emperor spoke up. "Those 2 colleagues of yours from the station? We've rescued them. You can rest easy now. That's why it took so long to summon you. I wanted to have that good news ready first." I felt a genuine wave of relief. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The atmosphere became incredibly relaxed. I decided to lean into it. "Your Majesty, Adding a bit of Sichuan pepper and black pepper to the broth would help clear the internal chill, I suggested. Next time you come, bring some for the emperor, the empress said. The palace kitchen doesn't have those. As we finished the meal, the emperor rinsed his mouth and looked at me. Chong Luo, do you think you're just a body double? I nodded. That was my understanding. He smiled. Do you know my name? I wouldn't dare to ask, I replied. My name is Zhou Chong'an, he said. Our generation all shares the Chong character. It clicked. I wasn't just a random look-alike. I was of the royal bloodline, hidden away at a remote station to keep me safe. Then, my real name is Zhou Chongluo. The empress laughed. Fifth brother, you really are calm under pressure. I offered a small smile. I'd seen enough soap operas to know where this was going. So, she continued, do you think the one in the southwest is an imposter? Isn't he? I asked, genuinely curious now. No, the empress explained. That's seventh brother. You're actually part of a set of quadruplets. My head spun. One prince on the throne, 3 brothers acting as doubles. To go to such lengths meant the royal bloodline was in extreme danger. Who is trying to kill us? I asked bluntly. A shadow crossed the emperor's face. The empress answered for him. Everyone, but mostly the powerful gentry from the south. Do we need to kill seventh brother then? I asked. The emperor shook his head quickly. No. He's a bit dim, but he's still our brother. The empress sighed, looking at her husband. Our bloodline has been weak for 3 generations. Hardly anyone lives past 20. I froze. I was almost 20. The emperor saw my panic and tried to comfort me. It's not a certainty. Look at me. I'm 29. I looked at his 32-point constitution and didn't feel very comforted. Between the genetic weakness and the constant assassinations, it was a miracle any of them were alive. And now we have you, the empress said, her eyes shining. The duke told me you have the strength of 10,000 men. It's wonderful. I looked at her 2,800-point stat and thought, lady, you're the one with the strength of 10,000 men. But I couldn't say that. The empress took the emperor's hand. I often wish I could give you half of my vitality, she whispered. The emperor gazed at her with pure devotion. The world is rarely perfect, but having you by my side is the greatest happiness I could ask for. Watching them, I felt a sudden, sharp pang of jealousy. Even in this mess, they had something real. The empress had a combat power of 2,800, yet she loved the emperor, who sat at a measly 32. I looked at my own 75 points and thought about my little rich girl, who was over 1,100. If they could make it work, why couldn't I? Maybe I just wasn't brave enough. The emperor snapped out of his thoughts. He told me that seventh brother had a lot of little schemes going on in the southwest, but to them, it was just a child throwing a tantrum. He needs to worry about surviving past 21st, I noted. The empress smiled, agreeing that was the cold reality. Then, the emperor got serious. He told me that since I accepted the imperial decree and came to the capital, I was now officially the Prince of Jinan. The Southwest was my fiefdom in name. As for seventh brother, he would be given a new title, Prince of Pingxi, with no land. The incident of the Ming era was officially shelved for now. Won't people be suspicious? I asked, a new brother suddenly appearing out of nowhere. The emperor gave me a gentle look. He explained that all 4 brothers had their bloodline prints stored in the ancestral temple since they were infants. No one could argue with a blood test. I asked about the Duke of Ing. The emperor laughed and said the Duke had just officially joined his side yesterday. Apparently, after I rejected his daughter at the martial arts marriage competition, she had cried her eyes out. So, is he one of us now? I asked. The emperor's smile turned bitter. He told me that in the royal family, there are no true insiders, only temporary allies. He then pulled out a report from the Duke and pointed at a line. It described the Prince of Jinan, me, as having world-class martial arts and extreme bravery. I cursed internally. He was setting me up. The emperor kept reading. The Duke's report went on to say that I had the look of a rebel, and that if I wasn't suppressed early, I would become a threat to the throne. He urged the emperor to deal with me for the sake of the dynasty. That old snake. This wasn't just praise, it was a direct hit piece. If that 2,800-point empress decided to act on it, she'd turn me into a red mist with one slap. I thanked my lucky stars I hadn't married his daughter, or she'd be a widow by morning. Before I could finish venting in my head, the emperor pulled out another report. This one was from the Jiangnan faction. It also started with high praise, calling me a hegemon body who ate a whole bear every day. They suggested that since the position of Great General of the North had been vacant for years, I should lead an army into the desert to fight the nomads. They claimed that whether I won or lost, it would be a blessing for the country. I knew exactly what they were doing. With my system, I could summon endless soldiers, but as a commander, I was a glass cannon. One stray arrow and the Prince of Jinan would be eating a funeral dinner. There were monsters in this world with thousands of stat points. If one of them decided to assassinate me, I'd be finished. I preferred staying behind the scenes, but these people were determined to hype me up until I popped. The emperor spoke up, his voice steady. He said our bloodline struggled to survive as it was, and he wouldn't risk me on the front lines. He wanted us to stay quiet and wait, following the examples of our ancestors who endured through hardship. I was actually touched. This emperor really was a good brother. He then asked about the double I had used at the Ten Kings mansion. I kept a straight face and told him I found the boy on my way to the capital. I claimed he looked just like me and was being chased by killers, so I saved him and kept him close. The emperor smiled. He said the double's personality and style were exactly like Seventh Brother's. He even thought for a moment that Seventh Brother had come to the capital himself. Then, he asked if he could borrow the double. I cupped my fists. If you need him, he's yours. The emperor sighed. He explained that he was worried Seventh Brother might be assassinated or die young. Having a double as a buffer would allow me to take over the southwest smoothly. He planned to send the double near Seventh Brother in secret to be ready to step in. I almost told him that if he needed more Seventh Brothers, I could provide a whole warehouse of them. Finally, the emperor told me my current courtyard was too small. He insisted I move into the actual prince's mansion. He told me to hire more guards and servants to maintain royal dignity, and said I could take them all with me when I eventually went back to the southwest. He even gave me a jade token that allowed me to command the dragon guards at any time. As I left, I looked at the emperor's 32-point constitution and felt a bit sad. But then I remembered my own 75 points weren't much better. I really needed to train harder. After I left, the emperor and empress shared a look. The emperor praised my character, saying I was a blessing to the people. He admitted that if Seventh Brother were his only successor, he wouldn't mind if the bloodline ended, but he saw hope in me. The empress agreed. Her reports showed that even though I had the power to summon soldiers from beans for 6 months, I hadn't used it for greed or to cause chaos. I had only helped those around me. Meanwhile, back at the Ten Kings mansion, the Seventh Brother clone was ecstatic. He thought he was destined for a life of plain rice and tea as a mere double. Now, he had a chance to replace the original and be a prince again. He wasn't a generous soul. He was already planning how to punish the guards who had looked down on him. I walked home feeling relaxed, but then I saw a girl waiting at my door. Her combat power was 650. It was Song Shangyun, the Duke's daughter. My heart skipped a beat. I had forgotten to bring my bodyguards. If she got emotional and tried to slap me, she'd break my neck. But I had an image to maintain. I adjusted my robes and stepped forward with a bow. Lady Song, I hope you are well. She looked miserable, dressed simply with a silver pin in her hair and no makeup. She was a girl of the martial world, so she didn't beat around the bush. Prince of Jinan, did the emperor arrange a marriage for you today? We talked about other things, I said gently. Marriage didn't come up. She snorted, her voice dripping with sarcasm. And here I thought you two were so close you'd be discussing wives by now. I didn't argue. I just smiled and invited her in for dinner, saying it was fate that we met. She got angry, asking if I thought she could be bought with a meal. Then she turned and walked away. She hesitated for a second after a few steps, but then she kept going without looking back. I sighed. I actually liked her straightforward personality. She would have been a great friend, but her father was a piece of work. You can't ignore the family baggage. With a heavy heart, I began the process of moving into the prince's mansion. The Prince of Stone's mansion had been cold and empty for years, but life was finally returning to its halls. The emperor sent over an old tutor, a man who had taught him personally in the past. Officially, he was there to teach me the ways of a prince. In reality, he was my guide to the world. He taught me about the customs of the Great Li dynasty, the power dynamics of the factions, and the military landscape. Under his guidance, I finally stopped feeling like a blind man feeling an elephant. I started to see the big picture. First, there was the Jiangnan faction. They controlled the richest lands, the silk and grain production, and all the overseas trade. They were loaded. Because they had all the money and food, they were incredibly stubborn. Tax evasion was their national sport. The imperial court barely saw 10% of the revenue they actually owed. The core of the Jiangnan faction was the merchant class. Their favorite weapon was gold. If they had a problem, they threw money at it. If you made them truly angry, they just hired high-priced assassins to end you. In recent years, this had reached a breaking point. 80% of the royal family members who died mysteriously were likely victims of Jiangnan hits. Sometimes they tried to hide it, and sometimes they didn't even bother. Physically, Jiangnan had already rebelled. They only stayed part of the empire because declaring independence would ruin their trade with the interior. Besides, rich soldiers don't like to fight. History showed that while they could defend their homes, their combat effectiveness crumbled the moment they left their borders. A Jiangnan general could scream, "Charge," and his men would just stand there, watching him run to his death alone. I realized then that the Jiangnan faction was just a group of petty elites who loved assassinations. Take away their daggers in the dark, and they were useless. Then there was the Southwest, my own territory as the Prince of Jinan. It was beautiful, full of mountains and forests, but it was also full of snakes, bugs, and very little flat land. It was hard to grow crops or raise silkworms. The mountain roads were a nightmare for transport. Their only exports were spices and mountain goods, which didn't fill many bellies. Historically, every ruler of the Southwest dreamed of rebelling, but they almost always failed. The land was harsh, and the people were tougher. If a local militia didn't get enough loot in a single battle, they'd just pack up and go home. If they did get lucky and find loot, they'd be so happy they'd pack up and go home anyway. Previous princes of Jinan fell into this trap every time. They'd call for an uprising, and hundreds of thousands would join instantly. The prince would think he was the chosen one. Then, a few weeks later, the army would vanish, leaving the prince standing alone and confused. Every new prince thought he had the secret to fixing this, but they all ended up with the same bewildered expression in the end. I shook my head. My seventh brother, the Prince of Pingxi, was probably in that early stage of thinking he was destined for greatness. He was in for a rude awakening. Then came the noble faction, the high-ranking officials in the capital. They were the military elite responsible for holding back the northern nomads. They held the swords, and their pockets were lined with embezzled funds. They were split into countless small cliques, constantly backstabbing each other. On paper, they were strong, but they were short-sighted and had no real vision. The emperor held their leash because he held the purse strings. If the money stopped, the army mutinied. Past emperors were experts at starving different factions of the nobles just enough to keep them obedient, like training dogs. The nobles once thought about seizing Jiangnan to replace the emperor's money with merchant gold. But every time they marched south, the Jiangnan merchants just paid off half the army to switch sides. Then they'd pay the northern nomads to invade from the back. The noble faction would crumble and crawl back home every single time. Finally, there was the emperor's faction. His power came from the common people across the vast lands. These people didn't want chaos. They wanted someone to help during disasters and protect them from hardship. If the emperor did those two things, the people would die for him and pay their taxes happily. Everywhere except Jiangnan faced disasters every few years. Without a central government to move resources, the commoners couldn't survive. To the average person, the nobles were thieves, the Southwest rebels were thugs, and the Jiangnan merchants were exploiters. None of them were builders. The emperor had taken the throne at 14. In the 15 years since, he had focused on infrastructure and the needs of the people. He had earned their love. He called me a true ruler, and honestly, he wasn't wrong. Back when I played management games, I was a farming player. I liked building, not raiding. My soul was wired to help people live better lives. Maybe that was why this system chose me. I had the mindset of a builder. But I wasn't thinking about world domination yet. I was just a royal survivor trying to live past 20. One afternoon, I was out on the grass at the mansion, fighting a tiger I had summoned. I was practicing the Arhut tiger subduing palm. I had ordered the tiger to be as dramatic as possible. It roared and lunged, looking terrifying, but it made sure never to actually scratch me. Of course, I couldn't land a hit on it either. "I'm going to kill you, you beast," I yelled, sweating and frustrated. Suddenly, something clicked. A spark of insight hit me. I froze. The tiger stopped instantly, sensing the change. Lin Xian stopped a servant who was bringing me tea. "Don't disturb him," he whispered. "The master is having an epiphany." He was shocked. I was only at the qi refining stage, yet I was entering a state of sudden enlightenment. It seemed I had a deep affinity for this martial art. The tiger subduing palm sounded like a common technique, but it was actually a top-tier skill from the ancient Vajra temple, capable of leading a practitioner all the way to the golden core stage. The original owner of my clone had survived countless hunts by the authorities because of this technique. To master it, one had to truly understand the ferocity of the tiger and possess the absolute courage to suppress it. Would you like to hear what happens in the next chapter? Before I crossed over into this world, I was the kind of guy who would face down a bear with nothing but a wooden stick to save a little girl. Now, I had a real tiger as a daily training partner. I had the guts and the resources. I sat there for about an hour, lost in a trance. When I finally opened my eyes, everything felt different. My gaze was steady, filled with a raw, fierce power. It was the kind of look you only see in legendary generals who have survived 1,000 bloody battles. I had mastered the essence of the technique. I lunged at the tiger again. I still couldn't land a clean knockout blow, but every palm strike I threw connected solidly with its body. The tiger looked genuinely confused. It seemed to be wondering how its master had suddenly become so formidable. That evening, a servant arrived to announce a visitor. Xie Su, the great general of the left martial guard, was here to see me. The name sounded familiar. Then it clicked. He was the father of Xie Wubing, that useless brat I had forcibly reformed. I received Xie Su using the royal etiquette I'd been cramming in my Prince of Jinan crash course. The moment Xie Su saw me, he flinched. I was only 18 and had never led troops in a battle, yet I carried the heavy, intimidating aura of a seasoned commander. He probably believed those rumors about me eating a bear every day to gain strength. As the head of the Imperial Guards responsible for the palace, Xie Su hadn't seen a real battlefield in decades. But he knew what a killer looked like. I had the vibe of those frontier generals, the kind of men who wouldn't hesitate to tear a lion apart with their bare hands. He looked at me and actually started wondering if he should buy a bear to eat so he could look more imposing. If I knew what he was thinking, I would have offered to sell him one of my summons. We sat down, me in the seat of honor and him below. After the servants brought tea, Xie Su spoke up, his voice surprisingly humble. He thanked me for educating his son, claiming the boy had turned over a new leaf. My schedule was packed, and I'd honestly forgotten about Xie Wubing. I asked how the kid was doing. Xie Su gave a wry smile. He told me the boy practiced martial arts every morning, studied literature in the afternoon, and spent his nights helping the poor. He was a completely different person. "He's probably just pretending," I remarked. "At first, yes," Xie Su admitted. "He was terrified of your prestige. But lately, he's actually started to enjoy it. He's doing it from the heart now." Xie Su was genuinely moved. Xie Wubing was his only surviving son. The other 3 had died young or met with accidents. I suspected the Jiangnan assassination group was behind those deaths. The Imperial Guards naturally sided with the royals, which made them targets. I didn't have proof yet, but I felt bad for the kid. Now that he was actually becoming a good person, he'd probably move right to the top of their hit list. After some small talk about the capital, Xie Su left. He went straight to meet his old friend, General Han Xinglong. They locked themselves in a secret room. "How is he?" Han Xinglong asked immediately. "He is fierce and brave," Xie Su replied. "But I saw mercy in his eyes. He is like a Vajra Arhut. He's the type of leader who cares for his men, not someone who would send them to die or discard them after they've served their purpose. We can trust him." Han Xinglong nodded. "We'll keep watching. If this works, we'll be the founding elders of a new era." The next day, Xie Wubing came to visit. He tried to act all chummy, putting his arm around my shoulder, but I sent him flying with a single palm strike. "Master," he whined, picking himself up. "You told me to be myself around you." "That was then," I said coldly. I am the Prince of Jinan now. Show some respect. He immediately knelt. My dad told me to suck up to you so I can be a high-ranking official in the future. I glanced at his stats. My jaw nearly dropped. In just 1 month, his power level had jumped from 85 to 120. He was on the same level as Old Wu now. I had the best teachers, the best training, and I wasn't even at 80 yet. Did you find some secret treasure? I asked, annoyed. He shook his head. He'd just been eating and exercising normally. It was pure talent and ancestral luck. Frustrated, I slapped him across the room again. With the tiger subduing palm mastered, I moved on to the golden snake silken hand, taught by Captain Ma. It was a high-level grappling technique used by the constables. I had a natural knack for it. Captain Ma kept calling me a martial arts genius. I was starting to understand how this world worked. Schools like the Vajra Temple or the constables focused on techniques that worked for everyone. They were reliable and solid. But the stuff Lin Xin practiced, the Gale Demon Wolf Sword, was different. It required insane talent. In his sect, they'd take 10 students and let them fight until only one survived. The weak ones were just tools for the strong. Clearly, I didn't have that kind of demon talent. I was better off with the standard, elite stuff. To master the golden snake style, I stopped training with the tiger and summoned a giant python instead. It was brutal. The snake constricted me until I was literally foaming at the mouth, but I eventually learned how to use softness to overcome strength. I practiced my new moves on Xiao Wubbing, frequently knocking him unconscious. Even though my raw points were only at 80, I could now hold my own against the 150-point Captain Ma in a fair fight. I wasn't that skinny kid anymore. With all the training and protein, I finally looked like I actually belonged in a gym. A few days later, the Emperor summoned me again. I brought him a gift, a bag of Sichuan peppercorns, star anise, and cinnamon. The man lit up like a Christmas tree. I knew exactly how to play this game. Fifth brother, the Emperor said, leaning back. How are your studies on geography and local customs coming along? I gave him a confident nod. I've finished the curriculum. I passed every exam with flying colors. The Emperor nodded, looking pleased. Excellent. Then tell me, do you think we should open a trade route in the Southwest? I took a moment to gather my thoughts. I wasn't just a survival streamer. I came from a world where we started learning the art of dragon slaying, statecraft, in middle school. History taught me how to rule, geography taught me how to weaponize terrain for the economy, and politics taught me the balance of power. To these people, I was a strategic genius. To me, it was just common sense. Opening a trade route in the Southwest has massive benefits. I started. The neighboring countries, Nanyu and Xianglua, have major seaports and produce huge amounts of grain. Trading with them lets us bypass the sea merchants in Jiangnan entirely. We can get the goods we need directly and effectively cut off half the funding for the Jiangnan political faction. And the downsides? The Emperor pressed. The terrain is treacherous, I replied. Once the route is open, we'll need a permanent military presence to guard the roads and constant funding for repairs. That's a massive strain on the treasury. Plus, that money would fall right into the hands of the seventh prince. Knowing his character, he won't use a dime for the roads. He'll use it to recruit soldiers for a rebellion. I wasn't done. Then there's the Jiangnan faction. Their entire power base is built on trade. They won't sit by and watch a competitor rise. They'll bribe local officials along the route, or even stir up the citizens of Nanyu and Xianglua to start riots. Every southern king who has rebelled in history probably had the Jiangnan faction whispering in his ear. The Emperor looked at me with pure satisfaction. He really thought I was a natural-born statesman. Little did he know, I was just channeling the energy of a Beijing taxi driver talking politics. The Empress stepped out from behind a screen, carrying a bundle of clothes and a sword. Fifth brother, she said with a smile. I bowed. Sister-in-law. She placed the items on the table. This is the Heaven's Sword, left behind by the first emperor. It cuts through iron like butter. The original hilt and scabbard were too flashy, so I had them replaced with something more understated. I looked at the understated gear. It was covered in gold, jade, and intricate carvings of dragons and phoenixes. I couldn't even imagine how gaudy the original must have been. The emperor pushed the clothes toward me. And this is a soft armor vest and shorts. It's woven from gold wire and 7 types of rare silk. It can stop a blade, and even shrug off a point-blank shot from a heavy bow. My father gave it to me when I was crowned prince. He looked a bit sheepish. I wore it a few times on tours, so it's technically secondhand. I hope you don't mind. Not at all, I said quickly. Free legendary tier armor? I'd take it in a heartbeat. Can you shoot a bow? He asked. Not a bit, I admitted. He sighed. Then I won't give you the first emperor's bow yet. It takes 90 units of strength just to pull it. I can't even budge it, though your sister-in-law uses it easily. Keep it with her then, I said. I couldn't pull it if my life depended on it. If someone asked me to show off and I couldn't even bend a string, the secret would be out. I slipped the armor on under my Southern King uniform, strapped the heavens sword to my waist, and looked at the emperor. When do I leave for the southwest? And how? I like how you get straight to the point, the emperor said solemnly. Leave in secret. As soon as possible. I've heard the 7th prince is coughing up blood. If you hurry, you might see him one last time. If you do, tell him his brother loves him. The empress added, the news of his illness is out. People will try to assassinate you to stop you from taking over the southwest. Be careful. I felt a strange pang of sadness. I didn't know the 7th prince, and we were technically enemies, but hearing he was dying felt heavy. Don't worry, little brother, I thought. As long as I'm around, I won't let you truly die. On my way back from the palace, the assassin struck. I had picked the wrong tool for the job. The crowd stared at the carriage, trying to see who owned that mysterious, powerful leg. But they only saw me. There was no one else inside. The realization hit the onlookers. The Southern King had been in his carriage, without pants. The rumors were going to be a nightmare. The Southern King defeats 1,000 men with a jade leg. Storytellers would be writing new sets by morning. The truth was simpler. In that moment of danger, I had summoned a second Lin Xian, a male version, right in front of me. Since the assassin was targeting me, the clone's defensive instincts kicked in. He didn't have a sword, so he used a kick. With 1,500 points of raw power, he sent that assassin flying. Once the danger passed, I didn't want a naked man in my carriage ruining my reputation further, so I ordered him to commit suicide and recycled the points. I was left alone, pantless and famous for all the wrong reasons. Back at the mansion that night, I gathered the 7 elite Bao Long guards: Zhang Long, Zhao Hu, Wang Chao, Mahan, Li Jia, Zhao Fu, and Du Shinyang. Their power levels ranged from 450 to 550. They thought they were coming with me to the south. I spent a full minute staring at each one of them, scanning their data into my system. I leave for the southern border tomorrow, I told them. But the Emperor's safety is the most important thing. You 7 will stay here in the capital and protect him. They looked at each other, confused. They had expected to be on the front lines. As they walked out, Du Shinyang hugged her chest and exhaled. The Southern King was staring at me so intensely. I was worried he'd force me to his bed. He has such a reputation, after all. But his eyes were completely clean. I guess the rumors are wrong. Mahan just looked grim. He didn't care about rumors. He knew things were about to get very dangerous. I had heard the rumors. People said the Southern King didn't care for women. He had ruthlessly rejected Song Shangyun, the stunning daughter of Duke Ying. But the rumors didn't stop there. As Wang Chao and the other guards walked away, their throats went dry. They realized the gossip about my preferences went in much darker, stranger directions. The 6 of us might have just narrowly escaped a terrible fate, Wang Chao whispered. Du Shinyang looked at him, confused. Why just the 6 of you? What about me? The men didn't answer. They just hurried away. Elsewhere, under the flickering glow of a dim lamp, several shadowed figures were gathered in a secret meeting. They were discussing the failed assassination attempt on me. The assassin was Mia Han, the gold medal killer from Xiao Yi Pavilion, one shadow whispered. He's taken down high-ranking officials from the Ministry of Justice. He never misses. And yet, another shadow replied. The Southern King kicked him through the air like he was nothing. Then his guard took the assassin's head with a single arrow. The shadows went silent for a moment. They were terrified. The Southern King clearly had powerful bodyguards nearby. The second shadow continued. He deliberately let the assassin get close, stripped off his clothes, and kicked him away. It was a demonstration. He was telling us that even without armor or weapons, he has the strength of a true Qi master. We can't touch him. But he had all our assassins killed on the spot, a third voice noted. He didn't leave anyone alive to talk. It's a message. He's not going to pursue us this time, but he doesn't want a second time. He's giving us a way out to save face. They all reached the same conclusion. The Southern King was a man of both wisdom and incredible violence. They decided to put the hits on hold until they could find an even more legendary killer. Back at my mansion, I stood with my eyes closed. I had summoned those elite guards earlier specifically to scan them into my system. My first priority for a new summon was the curvaceous and capable Du Shenyang. The clone version of Shenyang stood before me, already dressed and looking sharp. She glanced at Lin Xian and smirked. If I had been there today, I wouldn't have let my master face such danger. Lin Xian let out a cold snort, her eyes flashing with a dangerous light. I looked at Shenyang's data. Shenyang, your power level is 520. That's high for the guards, but against a 1,100-point assassin, you would have died in one hit. The clone stood tall, her expression resolute. I'm not afraid to die. I was trained from childhood to sacrifice myself for my lord. Besides, even if I die, you can just bring me back. As long as you keep me by your side, you'll never have to worry again. I nodded. She was right. From now on, you'll wear a disguise and go by the name Shenyang. You'll stay close to me. I need to stop those ridiculous rumors. I need people to know I definitely like women. Shenyang smiled playfully. If my lord says so, then as your subordinate, I believe you. And if you really want to prove it, well, I am prepared to sacrifice myself for that, too. I gnashed my teeth. She was teasing me. Fine. Let's spar. I'll show you my golden snake silk hands, and see how you like being harassed then. A few moments later, I was the one gasping for air. Shenyang had me in a chokehold so tight, I was turning blue and foaming at the mouth. She accidentally used too much force, and Lin Xian, clearly seizing the chance for a little revenge, stepped in and lopped the clone's head off with an arrow. I had to recycle her and summon a fresh Shenyang. It was a total mess. Outside, the May wind drifted through the eaves of the mansion. My other clone, the one posing as Prince Pingxi, was bored out of his mind. I had already left secretly for the southwest at dawn, leaving him behind to act as my double. I'm a prince. How can I live such a boring life? The clone grumbled. Then, a thought struck him. Wait. Master told me to play the part of the Southern King. And the Southern King is supposed to be obsessed with wine and women, right? I have to stay in character. He called for the new butler. Go to the best brothels in the capital. Bring me the most beautiful girls you can find. The butler hesitated. Are you sure you just want girls, Your Highness? The clone winced, thinking of the rumors he had to uphold. Fine. Bring me two. Pretty boys as well. The butler smiled and bowed. The clone wanted to cry. I'm sacrificing way too much for the mission, he thought. I was traveling light. I only took Lin Xian and Shenyang with me. We were riding 3 identical white horses, 1,000-point spirit beasts that could run like the wind. They could cover 800 miles a day. But by the time we hit 600 miles, I was falling apart. My groin felt like it had been scraped by 1,000 knives. My legs were so swollen and sore I couldn't move them. I cursed myself for not practicing my riding skills more back home. Lin Xian jumped off her horse and spread a tarp under the shade of a tree. I collapsed onto it, my face twisted in pain. For a body as weak as yours, Master, 600 miles is actually impressive, Shenyang said, trying to comfort me. I'm proud of you. I rolled my eyes. Thanks for the reminder of how weak I am. Do you want me to rub your legs? She asked softly. I hesitated. That area was sensitive and Shenyang was, well, distracting. That's probably not a good idea, I muttered, though internally I was screaming for her to insist. Lin Xian cut in. Master, if the pain is that bad, I can use my qi to block your pressure points. It will numb the sensation completely. I regretted bringing Lin Xian along at that moment, but I couldn't back down. I let her numb me. We rested for a bit, then pushed on for another 200 miles. The horses were finally at their limit. Since it was still early, I had Lin Xian kill all 3 horses. I immediately recycled them and summoned them back. Their fatigue was wiped clean. They were brand new again. We rode another 400 miles until nightfall, finally stopping at a roadside inn. The place was a black inn, a den of thieves. They saw our expensive horses and tried to lace our food with knockout drugs. Shenyang saw through it instantly. When the staff tried to get violent, Lin Xian neutralized them in seconds. Lin Xian wanted to kill them all, but I stopped her. A shop in the middle of the mountains was useful for travelers. Plus, I needed someone to cook and draw a bath. I scanned the 6 staff members, killed them, and then summoned them back as loyal clones. From now on, run this place honestly, I told them. Do good deeds. The 6 clones agreed, looking a bit traumatized by their sudden death and rebirth, and went to fix us dinner. The staff prepared a huge tub of hot water. I climbed in, expecting it to be heavenly, but I felt nothing. Lin Xian's numbing technique didn't just block the pain, it blocked all sensation. Can you unblock me now? I asked. Lin Xian just looked at me with disdain. Wait until you have your own chi, master. Don't be so ambitious. With your talent, you'll probably never cultivate chi in this lifetime anyway. I was furious. How did someone as rude as you survive this long? I'm your savior. I brought you back to life. I made Lin Xian do a handstand against the wall for the rest of the night as punishment. The next morning, the 6 innkeepers waved goodbye to us with tears in their eyes, finally leaving their evil pasts behind. With the help of the numbing technique, we pushed even harder, covering 1,200 miles in a single day. By the end of it, I was slumped over my horse like a piece of dried wood. I looked at my hands and sighed. Honestly, if I could just kill myself and summon a fresh version of me, I would have done it in a heartbeat just to get rid of the exhaustion. I had never envied my own summons more than I did at that moment. There wasn't actually a ticking clock forcing us to rush, but I wanted to experience the real life of a martial artist. Plus, I needed to build up some escape experience for whenever things inevitably went sideways in the future. My sheer persistence finally earned some respect from Sanyang. She sat down and began gently massaging my calves. I couldn't feel a thing because of the numbing technique, but I knew it was helping clear out the lactic acid buildup. You're a good prince, she said softly, her voice trailing off. If you ever decide you want me as your concubine later on, I'll say yes. My ears felt a little hot at that. Let's worry about the future when it gets here, I muttered. Her fingers paused for a split second. A smile spread across her face like ripples on a pond, but deep in her eyes, I saw something else. It was a faint, almost pitying look of realization. I stared at her, completely baffled. What was with that look? What did she think she understood? Right then, Sanyang made a silent vow to herself. She decided she had to do whatever it took to set me, the Prince of Jinan, on the right path. I was still young, after all. There was still time. She couldn't let the royal bloodline end with me. 3 days passed.